A soldier died on the battlefield, but got a second chance in a world of monsters and magic. With 200 talent points, Peter was the Academy's genius, until he awakened the worst class possible, Necromancer. While everyone laughed at his C class, Peter discovered a secret that would change everything. His ability? Summon undead with absolutely no limit. While others need teams, he is an army all by himself. In minutes, Peter shattered the Academy's record with 1,000 eliminations. His weakest enemy? Adrian Blackwood, who promised to bark like a dog if he lost. Spoiler, he lost. Now, a legendary old mage has given him the key to a legendary dungeon. What nobody expected, someone is already watching Peter and wants him dead. This story is getting really good. So drop a like and comment part 2 inches to help the channel. No more delays, let's get into the video. A colossal bird with glowing crimson eyes fills the screen, practically screaming that absolutely nothing good is about to happen. Moments later, armed soldiers aim their weapons at starving civilians trapped in a world poisoned by fear, prejudice, and desperation. One soldier steadies his gun, bitterly realizing that his nation's weakness transformed his homeland into a living nightmare. Well, morale isn't exactly at an all-time high. Without warning, blazing projectiles rip across the battlefield like meteors. The soldier is struck over and over before he can even react. His body collapses as the last of his strength slips away, and he accepts that both his life and his country have reached their end. Just as darkness swallows his vision, a brilliant glow reflects across his fading eyes. From the void, a radiant hand wrapped in dazzling golden light reaches toward him. No hesitation. He grabs it immediately. A pillar of magical light pulls him out of the abyss and breathes life back into his body. Opening his eyes again, the former soldier discovers he's no longer on a battlefield but standing inside the courtyard of an unfamiliar school. 3 years pass, and now he's quietly sitting in class, thinking back to the day he arrived in this strange world. Rather than waste the miracle he was given, he vows to use this second life to erase every mistake from his first. Redemption arc acquired. At the front of the room, the teacher struggles to calm a class buzzing with anticipation over today's awakening ceremony. Eventually, the instructor raises his voice and orders everyone onto the athletic field for the event that will determine each student's future. The story explains that everything changed after mysterious dungeons appeared across Earth, unleashing horrifying monsters upon humanity. To survive, people awakened supernatural abilities, and every warrior became ranked according to the strength of their class. Images of armored fighters battling monstrous creatures make one thing painfully clear. Your class determines your entire future. During the ceremony, elite student Luna Veramon awakens the incredibly rare Purification Saint class, immediately displaying overwhelming power. Her result reaches an astonishing 95 talent points, and everyone agrees that's the highest possible evaluation. Then the atmosphere explodes with excitement when Peter's name is finally called. Every eye follows him as he calmly walks toward the stage. After reaching an incredible 200 talent points, he's already recognized as the greatest student in the Academy's 3-year history. Talk about setting expectations impossibly high. On the stairs leading through the bleachers, Peter crosses paths with Luna. She flashes him a smug smile and teasingly tells him he'd better not disappoint her. Peter ignores the comment completely. Without saying a word, he keeps moving with the same composed expression. As the crowd chants his name, he arrives before the magical altar where the awakening will take place. Blue light shines within his eyes while he slowly reaches toward the awakening sphere. Watching from a distance, a mustached instructor remarks that possessing talent like Peter's is a once-in-a-generation blessing. He recalls that the nation's strongest guild reserved 5 openings, and Peter is practically guaranteed one if he receives a powerful class. The blue dragon emblem appears, emphasizing the unmatched reputation of the country's #1 guild. Joining them means immense strength, limitless opportunities, and the kind of glory everyone dreams about. But Peter wants something else entirely. He remembers dying as a soldier after powerful enemies invaded and destroyed his homeland. That's why he places his hand on the sphere with one goal: to become the strongest warrior alive and protect his nation from suffering that fate again. The instant he makes contact, an enormous blast of blue energy erupts across the field. Everyone immediately assumes he awakened some absurdly overpowered class. Naturally, that's usually how these explosions work. Then Peter slowly pulls his hand away, staring in complete disbelief. Luna and even the instructor freeze, equally stunned by what appears before them. The system announces his class, Necromancer. Dark energy engulfs him as countless skeletal figures materialize around his body. An enormous violet flame spreads across the field, leaving the audience speechless before the terrifying display. Some students initially believe they've witnessed another supreme class awakening. Then one girl crushes everyone's excitement by explaining that Necromancer is actually the weakest possible C class. That emotional damage landed with critical damage. Peter lowers his head, cold sweat covering his face as he desperately wonders how someone with his talent could receive such a worthless class. His status window confirms the result, listing his new C-class rank while showing every basic attribute sitting at level 10. From afar, the mustached instructor folds his arms and lets out a disappointed sigh, admitting he expected far more from Peter. Reading the description of his only summoning skill, Peter concludes that even after receiving a second chance, he's destined to remain insignificant. Then several golden system windows suddenly appear. They announce that every class restriction has been removed, completely eliminating his summoning limit. Peter's eyes light up. With only his starting 10 mana, he realizes he can instantly summon 10 soldiers. And that's only the beginning. As his level rises, his undead army will keep growing stronger and more unstoppable. A vision reveals an enormous legion of skeletal knights marching across the battlefield, ready to overwhelm every enemy in their path. His eyes gleam with excitement as he reaches one incredible conclusion. Without a summoning cap, he doesn't need teammates. He is the army. Now that's one way to skip the recruitment process. Peter clenches his fist, convinced this single change gives him enough potential to surpass every higher-ranked class. His fantasy is cut short when the instructor shouts at him to stop standing around and get off the stage immediately. Walking away quietly, Peter can't help finding it ridiculous how quickly the teacher's attitude changed simply because his class ranked lower. A faint smile spreads across his face anyway. He decides the obvious solution is to start grinding levels immediately since clearing dungeons should be effortless with his unique ability. Meanwhile, several students whisper that Peter's bizarre confidence proves reality finally broke his mind. Right on cue, a green-haired student strolls over wearing the most punchable grin imaginable. Wrapping an arm around a blonde girl, he arrogantly boasts about being superior and mockingly offers Peter a chance to accompany him into the dungeons, as nothing more than his personal errand boy. Eyes shut, Peter recalls that Adrian Blackwood has hated him for as long as he can remember. Adrian lets out a nasty laugh, saying there's nothing more satisfying than seeing the Academy's so-called genius trailing behind him like a loyal little pet. Bro has been waiting years for this level of pettiness. Peter doesn't even acknowledge him. He simply turns around and walks off, deciding someone that insignificant isn't worth a single word. Before he gets far, a woman's voice drifts through the air, complimenting him for keeping his cool instead of throwing a punch. Looking over, he spots Luna casually leaning against a pillar as if she'd been waiting for him the whole time. Convenient entrance unlocked. Still looking exhausted, Peter tells her he's really not in the mood for another joke. To his surprise, Luna drops the teasing attitude and sincerely offers to help him level up. Peter immediately grows suspicious. He argues that dragging around a weak beginner would only slow someone like her down. Luna shuts that argument down without hesitation. As Peter starts walking again, she follows, insisting that teaming up with her would dramatically improve his chances of joining the guild. She grabs his arm with complete confidence. Someone capable of scoring that perfectly could never end up as an ordinary mage. Watching the certainty in her eyes, Peter quietly admits to himself that Luna Harris is still incredibly perceptive. Girl really trusted the stats more than the system itself. He politely thanks her for being willing to lower herself to help him. After a brief pause, he gently removes her hand from his arm. Then he refuses. The unexpected rejection leaves Luna completely speechless. Straightening his tie, Peter confidently declares he'll enter the Grand Guild by his own strength because only one road remains open to him. Purple light flickers inside his eyes as he swears he'll climb high enough to make every Nova-class warrior bow their heads. Main character confidence detected. Soon, Peter arrives outside the Academy's crowded dungeon hall. He remembers that the sequential trial dungeons are the fastest way to gain levels. Without another thought, he walks through the enormous corridors, attracting curious stares from students he passes. Standing before the massive glowing portal, he recalls one important rule. These trials must be completed alone. Once he steps inside, there's no backing out. This place has a reputation for attracting only the strongest or people with absolutely zero survival instincts. The reason is simple. Its experience rewards are leagues beyond anything found in ordinary dungeons. Nearby, the main class instructor arrives alongside Luna and several other students. The teacher notices Peter standing before the portal. She immediately covers her mouth in horror, assuming today's humiliation finally drove the once promising prodigy towards suicide. Fair assumption, from her perspective. Trying to stay calm, she reminds herself Peter never seemed like someone who would choose such a tragic end. Still unwilling to gamble with his life, she decides to remain outside the dungeon so she can call for reinforcements if something goes wrong. Inside, the scenery shifts to a floating island. At its peak lies a huge isolated platform overflowing with green energy, marking the dungeon's safe zone. Peter quickly recognizes the protected starting area. He knows that the instant he steps beyond its boundary, the real battle begins, and retreat won't be an option anymore. Taking that first step, he immediately encounters a pack of 10 level 1 void dogs. Every single one looks ready to tear him apart. Starting with 10 enemies is certainly one way to say welcome. Peter understands why beginners fear this trial so much. Instead of hesitating, he activates his magic and summons 2 skeletal warriors to test his new class. The undead soldiers rush forward without wasting a second. Their heavy blades crash into the monsters leading the pack. Purple flames dance around the skeletons as razor-sharp sword strikes carve deeply into the first void dog. The system announces successful kills and awards experience. Seeing the results, Peter smiles. His summons are more than capable of handling this fight. Meanwhile, he calmly walks through the battlefield while defeated shadow beasts collapse around him. As he watches the carnage, he reflects on how quickly he fell from the Academy's brightest star to its biggest joke. A flashback of the mustached instructor ordering him off the stage brings today's humiliation rushing back. Emotional damage combo achieved. Nearby, another skeleton cuts down a magical hound, just as the system warns Peter that only 5 mana points remain. Adrian Blackwood's smug offer to make him a useless servant also echoes through his mind. Then an even older memory resurfaces. In his previous life, an invading soldier mocked his people as an inferior race that deserved to be wiped out. Peter realizes the contempt shown by the Academy's elite is identical to the hatred he witnessed during the war. His expression hardens. He silently vows that he'll never allow anyone to look down on him like that again. From this point forward, his only goal is becoming the strongest. Using every remaining point of mana, Peter summons the maximum number of undead soldiers possible. A terrifying battalion of 10 skeletal warriors instantly forms around him. 10 summons should be more than enough to sweep the entire first floor clean. Efficiency mode activated. Peter quickly devises a strategy, assigning 2 skeletons to each void dog, so every fight ends as fast as possible. The undead leap in perfect synchronization. Glowing eye sockets blazing, they raise their swords and descend upon the enemy pack. One armored skeleton brutally cuts down another beast. The system immediately rewards Peter with 20 more experience points. Watching the steady stream of kills, he estimates reaching level 2 will take less than 10 minutes. Knowing his mana regenerates at 1 point every minute, he realizes a short rest is enough to restore himself completely. Not exactly balanced, but who's complaining? The eerie growls of his undead army convince him that commanding an overwhelming legion is only a matter of time. With a simple order, he sends every soldier back into battle. More monsters fall one after another as the skeletons finish them with clean, decisive sword strikes across the dusty battlefield. At last, a towering column of purple energy engulfs Peter. The system announces that he's reached level 1. Checking the notification, Peter discovers the level up grants him 5 free attribute points while restoring 1/3 of his mana. Realizing mana is the key to everything, Peter dumps every single attribute point he earned straight into his magic stat. The investment expands his mana pool enough to command 15 undead warriors at once. Now we're min-maxing properly. Determination fills his eyes as he prepares to tackle the next floor without a shred of hesitation. Combat immediately ramps up on floor 2. One skeletal guard rushes in and quickly brings down a vicious gray wolf. Crossing the grassy terrain, Peter notices the monsters have already grown stronger. He decides right away not to underestimate anything inside this dungeon. Smart choice. Respawn isn't confirmed. Not long afterward, purple energy surrounds him once again. The constant level-ups make it obvious this trial is absurdly efficient for gaining experience. After raising his total mana to 20, Peter celebrates. His strategy has become a flawless loop of non-stop summoning, followed by effortless kills. Descending a gentle hillside, he notices the wildlife grows far more dangerous the deeper he ventures. Soon, massive horse-like shadows emerge, their blazing crimson eyes burning with hostility. Peter doesn't see monsters, he sees walking experience points. With a simple gesture, he orders his army to attack. His undead immediately obey. One skeleton intercepts a charging nightmare horse and smashes it with the flat of its massive blade. Another skeletal warrior follows up, slicing cleanly across the beast's neck. The target dissolves into magical particles as another victory goes to the undead battalion. Peter quickly realizes those monsters are finally powerful enough to destroy his skeletons if given the chance. Still, he remains completely confident. After all, he can already maintain an incredible 30 summoned servants. Quantity has entered the chat. The skeletal knights continue mowing through the shadow horses at an incredible pace. Experience notifications flood the screen one after another. Blue light suddenly envelops Peter. He's officially reached the long-awaited level 5. A new system message appears. The evolution restriction has been lifted. From now on, his undead can absorb defeated enemies and evolve. The interface even demonstrates how an ordinary skeleton can become a heavily armored knight by inheriting its victim's strength. Peter immediately realizes that every future battle can add entirely new soldier types to his growing army. A vision appears, showing him surrounded by swirling purple energy like the future ruler of the underworld. Definitely not subtle with the foreshadowing. Another reward unlocks as well. He gains access to gunpowder skeletons, explosive undead capable of devastating large areas. Peter smiles. Area of effect attacks sound like the perfect tool for conquering the 5th floor trial. The landscape changes into a dry wasteland where enormous armored rhinos patrol with terrifying horns. Ordinary skeletons would waste too much time trying to break through hides that thick. So Peter changes tactics. With a snap of his fingers, he transforms one skeleton. Orange flames ignite around its skull. 3 converted undead sprint across the battlefield carrying enormous barrels stamped with glowing red skulls. Peter silently watches his newest unit. Even he has to admit they look a little homemade. Budget department was working overtime. Covering part of his face with one hand, he decides to ignore the questionable design and focus on the damage instead. One wobbling skeleton clumsily drags its explosive barrel toward the giant beast's feet. The massive rhino roars at the tiny intruder, completely oblivious to the burning fuse. Moments later, everything explodes. A gigantic fireball engulfs the battlefield, sending blazing flames high into the sky. Peter is genuinely impressed by the destruction. Looks really can be deceiving. Checking his status screen, he realizes this strategy burns through mana far too quickly. If he wants to spam explosive skeletons, he'll need a much larger magic reserve. While walking, Peter also complains that the sequential trials give incredible experience but not a single useful item. Experience is nice, armor is nicer. Determined to fix that problem, he leaves the trial through the magic barrier, planning to visit a shop that specializes in equipment. Outside, the waiting teacher stares in complete disbelief. Peter not only survived, he came back at level 5. She finally understands that his perfect talent score produced an unprecedented anomaly. Without wasting another second, she decides to report everything directly to the principal. Inside the luxurious principal's office, Julian Kingsley listens while the exhausted teacher vents about everything that happened after the awakening ceremony. The moment Peter's name comes up, Julian looks irritated. He insists he has no time to waste discussing someone who awakened the lowest ranked class. The teacher refuses to let it go. She asks what kind of beginner could possibly reach the 5th floor within a single hour. That question instantly silences the principal. He knows a normal novice mage would struggle to survive even 5 minutes against the void dogs. Now that's what we call a plot twist. Completely stunned, Julian demands to know how Peter accomplished something that should have been impossible. Meanwhile, Peter strolls through the commercial district. One glance at the prices is enough to crush his mood. Even the cheapest clothes require gold coins. Back in the dungeon lobby, he realizes buying equipment isn't happening anytime soon. After noticing an injured party returning from a hunt, he decides he'll have to obtain his own gear the hard way. Opening the dungeon interface, he selects the giant Rhinoceros Mountain on gold difficulty. The new battlefield is filled with towering rocky cliffs. As soon as he arrives, the necromancer summons skeletal guards armed with long spears. His objective is simple: defeat the dungeon boss and claim the valuable rewards waiting at the end. With plenty of mana still available, Peter confidently advances, knowing he can keep expanding his undead army throughout the fight. A herd of stone rhinos charges in, attempting to crush the skeleton formation beneath their weight. The undead line holds firm without losing a single soldier. Magic-infused spears pierce through rocky hides, dropping monster after monster with surprising speed. Then, everything changes. A gigantic beast awakens in the middle of the stone wasteland. Its earth-shaking roar ripples across the entire battlefield. The colossal stone rhino bellows again, making it painfully clear this area's monsters are on another level. Watching the clash unfold, Peter notices his soldiers' physical attacks barely scratch the creature's armor. He doesn't look worried in the slightest. Raising one hand, blazing flames gather around it. Then he calmly reminds everyone that he has more than one way to win a fight. Never bring only one strategy to a boss battle. With another command, one of his undead instantly transforms into a blazing gunpowder skeleton, ready to carry its explosive payload into combat. The charging beast disappears inside a massive explosion. When the smoke clears, it's dead, rewarding Peter with another 100 experience points. Turns out armor has a slight weakness, becoming confetti. Realizing no amount of defense can survive his living bombs, Peter immediately converts every remaining skeleton into an explosive unit. Seconds later, blinding flashes erupt across the rocky wasteland. Multiple monsters are erased at the same time. Mystical energy floods around him as he reaches level 6. Peter quickly concludes that defeating the floor boss should push him through another level almost instantly. Then a gigantic shadow blankets the battlefield. The true ruler of the stone rhinos has finally arrived to defend its domain. Its thunderous roar shakes the entire area. A massive horn points forward while burning eyes glare with nothing but murderous intent. Even Peter gets shoved backward by the pressure wave. He admits the creature is absurdly huge for something that's only supposed to be a level 5 boss. Power scaling is already asking for overtime. Instead of panicking, Peter calmly tells the monster to take a good look around. The beast unknowingly walked straight into his trap. Nearly 100 explosive skeletons have already surrounded the Rhino King from every direction. Every single barrel detonates at once. The battlefield vanishes beneath an ocean of fire. When the explosion ends, the boss is gone, and Peter earns an incredible 5,000 experience points. That wasn't a boss fight. That was an industrial demolition project. The reward immediately pushes the necromancer to level 7. Satisfied, Peter praises his own strategy, convinced even the dungeon boss couldn't survive such a perfect setup. Then something catches his eye. A brilliant glow shines through the fading flames. The defeated monster dropped loot. A massive stone staff appears before him. Its rarity is epic. The weapon grants 30 additional mana along with 10 points of pure defense. Peter can't hide his grin. He just hit the jackpot with a top-tier piece of equipment. Sometimes RNG actually remembers your name. Remembering his academy lectures, he recalls that the system categorizes equipment strictly by both rarity and color. That realization makes him even more amazed. Out of all possible drops, he received the exact weapon he needed, and at epic rarity. Holding the magical staff, Peter estimates that even a lower quality version would cost at least 100 gold coins in the city's biggest equipment shop. After checking his updated status, he notices the staff boosted his total mana all the way to 75. Purple flames swirl around him. With that much magical energy, he can now command 75 undead soldiers at the same time. Talk about a workforce expansion. Back in the main lobby, Peter's path is blocked by Adrian Blackwood and his arrogant followers. The green-haired troublemaker smirks, claiming the position of personal lackey is still available if Peter is willing to beg for it. Peter responds with absolute silence. He simply stares back with a cold, emotionless expression. Adrian mistakes the reaction for defeat. He mocks Peter, assuming every powerful guild rejected someone carrying such a pathetic class. Then he proudly raises his bluish axe, showing off his rare weapon. Adrian promises Peter weapons, women, and a comfortable life if he agrees to become his servant. His followers immediately pile on with more insults. They urge Peter to accept the humiliating offer before he ends up dying alone. One blonde girl bursts into cruel laughter. She sneers that no woman would ever go near a loser like him, even if Adrian ordered her to. Well, that's one way to speedrun getting punched. Peter finally reaches his limit. He walks right up until he's inches from Adrian's face and calmly warns him he'll only say this once. Purple energy radiates from his eyes. Then he delivers a brutal insult and orders the spoiled brat to disappear from his sight. Adrian's pride shatters instantly. Furious, he grabs Peter by the tie and demands an explanation. One of his companions panics. The student hurriedly reminds Adrian that starting a fight inside the lobby means everyone involved goes straight to jail. Amazing how prison suddenly improves decision-making. The confrontation quickly attracts hunters and students, who gather into a circle to watch the showdown. Before anything escalates, an enormous security guard wearing sunglasses pushes through the crowd and demands to know what's happening. Caught completely red-handed, Adrian immediately lets go of Peter. Without missing a beat, he shamelessly lies, claiming they were only fooling around. The guard isn't buying the act. He sharply reminds everyone that the lobby isn't an amusement park, and orders the crowd to disperse. Adrian asks for one final minute. Grinding his teeth, he promises Peter that he'll kill him the moment they meet outside the safe zone. Classic villain exit dialogue. Without another glance, Adrian gathers his group and walks away, determined to conquer the 5th floor before the day ends. Peter watches him leave. His glowing purple eyes reveal he would have crushed Adrian on the spot if security hadn't interrupted. The guard sighs. He admits people like Adrian are hopeless, and tells Peter to report him immediately if he causes more trouble. Peter heads toward the red portal. The guard tries to stop him, warning that the selected difficulty is far beyond what any beginner should challenge. Then the guard notices something. His eyes go wide. Cold sweat instantly runs down his face. Peter is carrying an epic staff. Completely ignoring the reaction, the necromancer decides to use all 4 of his daily dungeon attempts to level up as quickly as possible. The guard pieces everything together. That weapon could only have dropped after defeating the King of the Riddles on gold difficulty. The realization leaves him speechless. Peter calmly steps through the glowing portal. The stunned guard can only watch as he realizes the student cleared Rocky Mountain entirely on his own. Accompanied by his ever-growing undead army, Peter decides to speed things up and finish every remaining run for the day. Outside the dungeon, the guard continues staring at the glowing red portal. He confirms Peter really entered the gold tier dungeon again. Not even many top-ranked hunters could clear a golden dungeon alone. And this guy's still technically a rookie. Inside the boss chamber, another gigantic rhino king unleashes an earth-shaking roar. Across from it, an explosive skeleton quietly readies its barrel. Wearing a confident smile, Peter mockingly comments on the monster's desperate attempt to bare its fangs. A single massive detonation engulfs the stone giant. Another 5,000 experience points are added to his total as the second run ends in complete success. Peter doesn't even bother moving. He simply watches the enormous beast collapse beside him. Keeping the same merciless expression, he sarcastically remarks that these monsters never seem to learn from their mistakes. The grind continues as wave after wave of explosive skeletons obliterate everything in sight, repeatedly blowing apart every boss that stands in Peter's way. With a single order from Peter, the undead surge forward once again, each explosive skeleton sprinting toward its target with another barrel in tow. The result is complete devastation. Another massive monster crashes lifelessly onto the rocky ground, ending yet another fight that barely qualified as a battle. Difficulty setting, decorative. The system fills Peter's inventory with rare weapons and armor. Since none of it suits a necromancer, he plans to sell everything later. Leaving the dungeon through the portal, Peter decides it's finally time to rest. Tomorrow is the professional novice exam. His status screen reveals the results of the non-stop grind. He's reached level 9 with an impressive total of 85 mana. The following morning, the Grand Academy's entrance is overflowing with students eager for the big event. Groups of rookies excitedly discuss the guild selection test while proudly boasting that they managed to hit level 4 by hunting together. Walking through the crowd, Peter can't help finding their progress unusually slow. Bro accidentally speedran the tutorial. His thoughts are interrupted when Adrian approaches from behind, ready to mock Peter for leveling alone. Dressed in bright red armor, the arrogant rival proudly announces that he's already reached level 5 before sarcastically asking whether Peter ever found someone willing to help him. Before Peter can answer, the academy principal silences the entire crowd. The professional novice examination is about to begin. Standing before everyone, he announces that the top 5 performers will earn spots in the main guild. Whoever claims first place will also receive an epic item. That reward instantly sends excitement through the students. A future with the nation's most prestigious guild suddenly feels within reach. The instructors then introduce Elder Aaron Crowley, a legendary figure revered as one of the military guild's greatest sources of power. An instructor explains that Aaron himself will create the monsters inside each testing chamber. Rankings will depend entirely on how many enemies each student defeats within 30 minutes. The elderly mage, sporting a white mustache, silently stands there while a dense blue aura radiates from his body. Hearing he's a level 70 mage immediately terrifies the students. They start imagining monsters capable of deleting them from existence. Fair concern, honestly. Aaron raises one hand to calm everyone down. He assures them the summoned creatures will be weak and promises to immediately stop the test if anyone calls for assistance. His reassurance restores everyone's confidence. The students once again focus on giving everything they've got. Adrian, unfortunately, also regains his confidence. He resumes taunting Peter, claiming he'll turn him into his personal plaything after joining the elite guild. Peter's patience finally expires. Purple energy flickers across his eyes as he calmly tells Adrian he's ready to settle things right now. Instead of fighting immediately, Peter proposes a wager. Their final rankings in today's exam will decide who the strongest hunter really is. Adrian bursts into laughter. He ridicules the idea of comparing someone at Peter's level with a hunter as superior as himself. Confidence levels reaching dangerous heights. Peter completely ignores the insults. He simply tells Adrian to decide what punishment awaits whoever loses. Burning with pride, Adrian declares that the loser will crawl on all fours and bark like a dog before the entire academy. Peter accepts without the slightest hesitation. Looks like someone's about to regret inventing that bet. Turning his back to the crowd, the principal officially declares the first day of the academy's novice examination underway. He instructs every participant to enter their assigned testing room through the giant double doors. Standing beside Elder Aaron, the security guard confirms the teleportation gates are fully activated. Everything is ready. Aaron Crowley brings his hands together. The level 75 mage gathers an enormous amount of magical power, forming a brilliant green magic circle. Glowing seals instantly appear beneath Peter and every other competitor. A moment later, they're teleported into their respective arenas. Peter arrives inside his examination chamber wearing the same calm expression as always. He quietly studies the first obstacle waiting for him. Several level 1 bronze soldiers materialize from shimmering green light, each carrying a sharp spear. Without hesitation, Peter summons his skeletal army. Scythe in hand, he steps forward, eager to measure his summon's true combat ability. The bronze constructs immediately charge at him, thrusting their spears with impressive speed. Peter doesn't retreat even a single step. Instead, his undead raise their massive axes and rush headfirst into melee combat. One shadowy skeleton swings with brutal precision. The bronze soldier is cut clean in half, its armor exploding into shattered pieces. Resting his scythe across his shoulder, Peter casually concludes these enemies are incredibly weak. They'd only become troublesome if he were limited to a single summon. Outside the arena, Aaron notices one contestant eliminating 5 enemies at an astonishing pace. Interested, he quietly increases the difficulty. Fresh green light appears before Peter. More armed enemies begin materializing to reinforce the battlefield. Peter watches his undead intercept the newcomers without difficulty. 5 skeletons are more than enough to handle the situation. 5 versus 10? Math has officially left the chat. Watching carefully, Peter realizes each undead soldier can comfortably fight 2 opponents simultaneously. Meanwhile, Aaron breaks into a cold sweat. 10 of his bronze soldiers have just been wiped out almost instantly. The security guard praises the outstanding performances taking place inside the arenas. A woman wearing a blue cloak agrees, commenting that this year's class is overflowing with talent. Curious about who's causing such destruction, she asks for the live rankings to be displayed. The security guard opens the leaderboard. His eyes immediately widen. Peter the Necromancer is sitting at the very top. The glowing scoreboard lists Peter alone in first place with 15 eliminations achieved in record time. As everyone watches, his score keeps climbing almost every second. The display refreshes again. Peter has already broken past 23 kills. Speedrun category, everyone else's self-esteem. The stun guard asks the woman whether she finally believes just how extraordinary that mysterious student really is. Another Academy staff member wonders if Peter's unbelievable performance is the result of possessing 200 talent points, far beyond normal limits. Aaron quietly recalls that even he reached only 99 talent points in his youth. To him, Peter isn't merely gifted. He's a true diamond in the rough. Excited by the boy's limitless potential, Aaron Crowley channels an even greater torrent of magical power, determined to push the trial's difficulty much higher. Completely unaware of the commotion outside, Peter casually keeps his hands in his pockets and decides this exam is even easier than the Rhino dungeon. Then a deafening rumble echoes through the arena. He turns toward a massive wall of glowing green magic as it rapidly takes shape. Yeah, that's probably not good. The light finally fades. Dozens upon dozens of bronze soldiers now surround the necromancer from every direction. A bead of sweat slides down Peter's face as he sizes up the ridiculous number of enemies packed into the arena. An endless tide of magical warriors advances together like a giant green tsunami. Determined to overwhelm his undead, the elder really said, "Increase difficulty." Instead of panicking, Peter grins. Gripping the handle of his scythe, he gladly accepts Aaron's challenge. Purple mist bursts across the battlefield. 30 skeletal soldiers answer his call, roaring as if challenging the entire enemy army. Meanwhile, inside another testing room, Adrian hacks through bronze soldiers with furious swings of his massive axe. Covered in sweat, the red armored fighter celebrates every kill. Certain of victory, he swears Peter will never catch up to his score. Confidence is free, after all. A memory from 2 years earlier suddenly flashes through his mind. Back then, Adrian proudly scored 707 points during the Academy's talent assessment. He smiled triumphantly while classmates eagerly asked him to carry them. Then reality ruined the mood. He remembered Peter's score, 200 talent points. Back in that old memory, Peter stood alone while Adrian and the other students watched from outside the evaluation room. A blonde classmate stared in disbelief. She remarked that a score of 200 placed Peter at the very top of the nation's rankings. Even the Academy principal publicly acknowledged Peter's extraordinary talent. He told the elite students they should focus on keeping up with him. Adrian absolutely hated hearing that. As the second heir of the Blackwood family, he refused to accept standing on equal footing with Peter. Only his older brother had ever surpassed him. Now some orphan was supposed to be his benchmark? Not happening. Back in the present, Adrian roars as another bronze soldier falls beneath his axe. He confidently declares his knight class will crush Peter's necromancer class. Then he reminds himself that Peter should start practicing his barking. Bro has not let that bet go. Laughing loudly, Adrian reaches 15 points on the Academy's scoreboard. At almost the exact same moment, one of Peter's skeletons cuts down another enemy. His score instantly skyrockets to 79. Peter's undead expertly block incoming spear attacks before countering with flawless swordplay. Moments later, a gigantic axe slices clean through another bronze soldier's neck. Watching the battle unfold without the slightest concern, Peter calmly pushes past 100 eliminations on the main leaderboard. Looking over the battlefield, he notices 14 skeletons have already been destroyed. He simply accepts those losses as the unavoidable price of fighting an army. Can't make an omelet without sacrificing a few skeletons. Knowing another wave is inevitable, Peter immediately prepares to summon fresh reinforcements. After spending roughly half his mana, he begins wondering why his arena suddenly contains so many enemies. Outside, both the principal and the security guard stare in disbelief. Peter has shattered the Academy's historical record before the timer has even reached halfway. Aaron breaks into a nervous sweat. Over 100 of his summoned soldiers have already been destroyed. The veteran silently compares Peter's current challenge to fighting a level 5 dungeon boss. Tightening his grip on his staff, Aaron pours even more mana into the spell. He mutters that the boy is making him look bad. Personal pride has entered the boss fight. A colossal pillar of green magic erupts from Aaron Crowley's staff. The security guard immediately turns pale. The evaluator realizes things are rapidly slipping beyond his control. For the first time, he genuinely fears the worst. The guard rushes over and asks whether Aaron is alright. He wonders if maintaining all these examinations has exhausted the elder's mana. Aaron immediately dismisses the concern. He calmly says summoning 10,000 soldiers wouldn't even make him break a sweat. The guard blinks. Then what's the problem? Aaron's expression grows deadly serious. He admits he got carried away and accidentally flooded Peter's arena with far too many enemies. By his estimate, the boy's life may now be in real danger. Meanwhile, Peter is smiling. Not exactly the reaction they expected. Hand resting on his scythe, he stares at an ocean of thousands of bronze soldiers stretching across the battlefield. He honestly wonders why there are suddenly so many. Watching his remaining skeletons struggle against the overwhelming horde, Peter realizes it's finally time to bring out his strongest weapon. One snap of his fingers changes everything. He activates his special skill, Gunpowder Skeletons. One undead warrior instantly transforms, a blazing explosive barrel appearing in its hands. More skeletal bombers materialize moments later. Each one grabs a massive barrel before charging directly toward the enemy ranks. Purple light gleams inside Peter's eyes. He calmly orders every explosive summon to blow the opposing army into oblivion. No speeches, just explosions. Without hesitating for even a second, one bomber leaps straight into the center of the tightly packed formation as thousands of bronze soldiers level their spears. Watching the scene unfold, the security guard desperately begs Aaron to cancel the summons immediately. They can't afford to lose someone as gifted as Peter. Nearby, the principal remains locked onto the magical display, silently wondering where Peter's true limits actually lie. Just then, the woman in the blue cape raises her hand. She orders both men to wait before ending the exam. The guard can't believe what he's hearing. He argues Peter will be ripped apart if they hesitate any longer. Practically dripping with sweat, the man points frantically toward the live scoreboard. He begs the woman to check the numbers first. The holographic display refreshes. Peter's score has exploded to 295 eliminations. Before anyone can even react, it updates again. 350 kills. Speedrun world record loading. The guard's jaw nearly hits the floor. He can barely believe the student responsible for that unbelievable number is supposedly nothing more than a C class. Aaron quietly reflects on what he's witnessing. A newly awakened hunter with talent and power like Peter's might someday become the nation's greatest hope. Even so, the security guard continues insisting the examination should end before disaster strikes. Aaron refuses. He wants to keep pushing Peter until his score finally starts slowing down. Inside the arena, a gigantic orange fireball erupts, incinerating dozens of enemies in one blast. Peter's score instantly surges to 800 eliminations. The explosive skeletons keep hurling flaming barrels without slowing down. A few more detonations later, the counter climbs past 900. The bronze soldiers don't even get a chance to defend themselves. They're launched into the air as flames, debris, and shattered armor fill the battlefield. Safe to say, OSHA would have concerns. Peter calmly walks through the thick smoke. Even after all that destruction, he notices a handful of enemies still standing. Without breaking stride, he orders one of his skeletal warriors to finish off every remaining survivor. Minutes later, the scoreboard reaches an unbelievable milestone: 1,000 kills. Looking over the ruined battlefield, Peter quietly wonders if he might have gone a little overboard. Just a tiny bit. Back in the monitoring room, the Academy staff notices something unusual. Peter's elimination count has suddenly stopped increasing. The guild's powerful vice president stares at the rankings in amazement. The young man didn't simply survive. He completely wiped out the entire bronze battalion. The woman in the blue cape smiles, celebrating the successful exam. She asks Aaron whether she'd like her to bring the mysterious student over immediately. Aaron doesn't answer. Instead, he silently stares at the display. His two advisors exchange confused glances, unable to understand his reaction. Then Aaron finally speaks. With an unusually serious expression, he announces that he'll personally visit the student's evaluation room. The security guard immediately objects. The examination is still underway, so what happens to everyone else's arenas if Aaron leaves? Blue magic circles wrap around the elder's body. He calmly explains that every other testing room will continue operating even if he steps away. Curiosity has officially overridden protocol. Determined to verify everything with his own eyes, Aaron reflects that if Peter's power is genuine, his potential is beyond calculation. A brilliant flash engulfs the arena. The veteran mage teleports away instantly. Meanwhile, after eliminating every enemy, Peter finally lets out a quiet sigh beside his intimidating skeletal army. He admits that fighting over 100 constructs without his explosive skeletons would have been a serious headache. Then another magic circle appears behind him. Blue light floods the arena. Peter immediately assumes another wave of enemies has arrived. As the teleportation spell finishes, he notices something strange. Only one figure emerges this time. The skeletal army reacts on instinct. Every undead warrior rushes forward, surrounding the newcomer from every direction. Talk about an enthusiastic welcome committee. Their blades crash downward in perfect synchronization. Just before the swords connect, Aaron casually stops every weapon in midair. Each blade freezes mere inches from his face. The experienced mage carefully studies the terrifying skeleton surrounding him. Quietly, he mutters that these summons are unlike any ordinary necromancers. Peter, surprised to see the examiner himself inside the arena, asks why Aaron suddenly interrupted the test. Aaron gets straight to the point. He explains that C-class necromancers simply aren't supposed to fight like this. Peter calmly confirms that's exactly the class he awakened. Aaron steps closer. He reminds Peter that ordinary necromancers can only summon once every 30 minutes. A bead of sweat runs down Peter's face. The exam has barely begun, yet dozens of skeletons are already standing around him. The elder fixes his gaze on the undead army. He demands to know how Peter built such an enormous force in so little time. Well, that's a difficult question. Peter swallows nervously. Caught completely off guard, he debates whether revealing his greatest secret is actually worth the risk. Aaron quickly dismisses any excuses. He explains he isn't interested in exposing Peter. He simply needs to know whether this overwhelming power can be safely controlled for the nation's sake. Those words remind Peter why fate granted him a second life. He realizes earning Aaron's trust is the right decision. Rather than reveal everything at once, Peter decides to expose only part of the truth. He raises one arm. Purple mana surges around his body. Violet flames erupt across his suit, releasing so much magical energy that even Aaron looks visibly impressed. Actions speak louder than explanations. Two brand new skeletal warriors materialize before the elder's eyes. Peter explains that ordinary necromancers used to be limited to summoning once every 30 minutes. The surrounding air grows heavier as more undead stand ready. He continues, explaining that standard summons also disappear after only 1 hour. Then Peter's glowing purple eyes lock onto Aaron. In a firm voice, he declares that none of those restrictions apply to him. The countless swords scattered across the battlefield silently prove his claim. Aaron's eyes widen. A mere first-year student has just claimed to possess unrestricted necromancy. The veteran mage struggles to process the impossible revelation. Infinite summons? That changes everything. He carefully asks whether Peter can command an endless legion using nothing except his available mana. Peter calmly nods. Aaron stares at him in silence. He realizes the boy's value goes far beyond that of an exceptionally talented rookie. Without hesitation, the elder promises he'll personally report everything to the guild president. Peter immediately figures he's referring to the leader of the Azure Dragon Guild. As Aaron prepares to leave, green teleportation magic surrounds him. Then, the spell suddenly fizzles out. Peter looks confused, wondering why the teleportation unexpectedly failed. Before trying again, Aaron reaches into his belongings. He extends his hand toward Peter. Resting in his palm is a small golden key. Now that's an interesting consolation prize. The glowing artifact leaves Peter staring in stunned silence. Aaron raises the key and asks whether the young prodigy has ever heard of blessing rifts. Keeping his composure, Peter answers that he studied the rare phenomenon during his academy classes. Images illustrate a terrifying level 10 monster guarding one of those mysterious rifts, whose rewards far exceed those of ordinary dungeons. Another illustration reveals the legendary keys required to open them, artifacts so rare they're almost never found. Peter completely loses his calm. He finally realizes Eren intends to hand him one of those legendary treasures. Eren's expression never changes. His resolve is unmistakable. With great care, the white-haired elder places the golden key into Peter's hands, gifting him a single-use artifact capable of opening a blessing rift. Finally, the teleport spell activates, and the veteran vanishes inside a pillar of emerald light, leaving Peter alone in the arena. His fingers tighten around the golden key while violet light flickers in his eyes, and he decides the hidden rift will be his next destination once the exam is over. Outside, the Academy's principal announces that time has expired and officially brings the grand assessment to a close. Adrian Blackwood exhales in relief, leaning against his sword after surviving the grueling challenge. Bro looked like he'd just finished the world's longest cardio session. Looking around the wrecked battlefield, the red armored heir recalls the endless waves of soldiers he had to cut down. With a smug grin, he boasts that defeating 40 enemies should easily make him the Academy's #1. Then the loudspeakers crackle to life, ordering every participant to report to the central courtyard for the results. Nothing attracts a crowd faster than public rankings. Exhausted students pour into the open square, creating a massive sea of anxious faces. Two classmates grumble about how brutal the monsters were, lamenting scores of only 7 and 15 kills. Chest puffed out with confidence, Adrian scans the crowd, convinced Peter fled to avoid embarrassment. Another student points him in the right direction, revealing the necromancer quietly waiting for the announcement. Well, awkward timing. Adrian marches straight across the grass without slowing down. He grabs Peter by the tie without the slightest respect, mocking him for sticking around after what he assumes was a humiliating loss. Peter ignores every insult, calmly keeping the golden key hidden inside his pocket. Leaning in until they're nearly face to face, the green-haired bully reminds him to get ready to bark before the whole school. Waking up and choosing menace isn't always the best strategy. A cruel smile spreads across Adrian's face as he imagines watching the necromancer crawl across the courtyard in disgrace. From the balcony above, the principal calls for silence so he can reveal the official standings. Holding a glowing clipboard, he explains that only the top 5 competitors will be announced. 5th place goes to Tristan with 39 points, stunning the audience with such a high score. Adrian chuckles and quietly tells Peter that even he scored higher than that. Next comes 4th place, Adrian himself with 41 points. He immediately orders Peter to bark, but Peter calmly replies, "The results aren't finished yet. Talk about celebrating before the credits rolled." Adrian snaps back, telling him to stop dreaming about reaching the podium. Right then, Luna is announced in 3rd place with 77 points. The white-haired girl happily celebrates while everyone praises the incredible strength of her support class. 2nd place belongs to the muscular Colin with 95 points, leaving him demanding to know who possibly ranked above him. Now the principal starts sweating. Taking a deep breath, the principal struggles to steady his trembling voice before revealing the champion. Then he shouts for the entire academy to hear that Peter claimed 1st place with a flawless and absolutely absurd 1,000 points. The courtyard falls completely silent. For several long seconds, nobody can process what they just heard. Then the realization hits. The previous school record wasn't just beaten, it was obliterated. Speedrun category, academic domination. Luna stares in amazement while another student points out that the winner belongs to one of the academy's weakest classes. Colin breaks into a cold sweat after calculating that Peter must have been eliminating dozens of enemies every single minute. Adrian completely falls apart, barely able to string together a sentence after learning he lost the competition. His eyes twitch uncontrollably as the overwhelming score crushes every ounce of confidence he had. Shaking from head to toe, he approaches Peter again, desperate for any explanation that makes sense. Peter simply meets him with the same calm expression and reminds him that he just lost their wager. Adrian stumbles backward, accusing the champion of cheating. Peter smirks and asks if he's really planning to run away from the bet now. The surrounding students burst into laughter, remembering that the loser promised to bark like a dog in front of everyone. Turns out witnesses are incredibly inconvenient. Unable to accept reality, the Blackwood heir stomps the grass in frustration, his mind completely consumed by rage. He collapses where he stands, screaming that a low-ranked necromancer could never score 1,000 points. The crowd tells him to show at least a little dignity and honor the wager, while the dedicated Lon quietly watches everything unfold from the back. Back on stage, the principal speaks again, announcing that the tournament champion will receive an epic grade item from the renowned Dragon Guild. Peter is invited onto the stage, but before leaving he coldly warns that he has no time for trash and orders Adrian Blackwood to stay out of his sight. Still sprawled on the ground, Adrian spits out another threat, insisting his superior rank will soon let him surpass the necromancer. Blinded by pride, the boy in crimson armor vows to make Peter suffer until his miserable end. Some people really don't know when the cutscene is over. Peter slowly turns toward him, his expression becoming ice cold after hearing the ridiculous threat. Behind him, an enormous skull formed from violet energy materializes, radiating overwhelming terror and death. The crushing pressure instantly breaks Adrian's courage. He lets out a terrified scream and collapses backward, completely paralyzed with fear. Mission accomplished, emotional damage. After silencing his greatest rival, Peter walks away without the slightest trace of mercy. he climbs the academy's long white staircase while every student silently watches the rise of their new king. The moment he reaches the stage, the smiling principal places a hand on his shoulder and congratulates him on his incredible victory. Then the suited official gestures into the air as the partner guild unveils 3 valuable reward options. A sword, a suit of armor, and a magical cloak appear as glowing projections while the principal invites the young champion to make his choice. Peter studies the 3 prizes one by one, carefully weighing which reward will accelerate his growth the most. It doesn't take long to dismiss the massive sword and heavy chest armor. They're built for frontline fighters, not a necromancer. Wrong class, wrong build. With only one logical choice left, he reaches for the dark enchanted cloak. The moment it settles over his shoulders, he grins after seeing the mana boost, realizing it increases his undead limit by another 50 summons. The principal raises Peter's arm high, officially declaring him the unquestioned champion of the first day of testing. The courtyard erupts as students cheer together, throwing their fists into the air while chanting the prodigy's name. Main character energy has entered the chat. Bathed in the afternoon sunlight, Peter allows himself a faint smile, quietly enjoying the recognition he earned. Before dismissing everyone, the principal announces that the next major examination will take place in 1 month, and orders every student to keep training. The story then shifts to an old, worn-down apartment complex that has clearly seen better days. Inside his modest room, Peter studies the mysterious key Aaron Crowley gifted him earlier that day. Following the instructions he memorized from the manual, he channels dark mana directly into the artifact. The tiny key suddenly blazes with light, firing violet beams that tear open a warped dimensional gateway. Peter stares in surprise as the golden relic literally rips space apart to create a portal. Casually carrying portable wormholes is a pretty solid perk. Aaron's earlier advice echoes in his mind, urging him to recruit a healer before attempting the rift. Peter silently apologizes to the old mage, but ignores that suggestion completely, because teamwork is apparently a myth. Walking toward the portal without hesitation, he quietly mutters that he's always preferred handling everything alone. Twisted energy floods the room before brilliant light engulfs the young necromancer and pulls him into the dimensional passage. Crossing into the hidden dungeon, Peter surveys the rocky landscape while searching for signs of its native monsters. He soon identifies level 9 leopards and immediately concludes they trade low durability for terrifying speed and attack power. After tapping the butt of his scythe against the ground, he decides the safest strategy is simple: never let them reach him. He summons an undead battalion and commands every skeleton to build an unbreakable defensive wall around him. Tank formation activated. The skeletal soldiers lock their heavy shields together while spear wielders stand ready behind the line to defend their master. The charging beasts slam into the formation, only to be skewered by waiting spears and instantly turned into experience. Peter blinks at the system notification, stunned that even ordinary enemies inside this place award so much experience. Well, now that's an XP farm. After clearing the entrance, the Academy champion decides it's time to push deeper into the dungeon. As he advances through the canyon, he realizes keeping every summon on defense wastes far too much offensive potential. One shadow leopard tries to flank him from behind. Big mistake. A sword-wielding skeleton intercepts it with one brutal slash. The beast howls before being cleanly split in 2, adding even more experience to Peter's total. A swirling emerald aura wraps around him as he finally reaches the long-awaited level 10. He opens the status panel and smiles after discovering the milestone unlocked a brand new skill. The ability summons a gigantic demonic eye capable of filling anyone who meets its gaze with overwhelming terror. After reading the details, Peter realizes the fear effect lasts longer against weaker opponents, making it an absurd crowd control ability. Sounds balanced. Totally. He remembers everyone dismissing the spell because it normally comes with a brutal 24-hour cooldown. Peter simply smiles, knowing his unique talent completely ignores that limitation and lets him cast it endlessly. A deafening rumble suddenly shakes the rocky valley. Massive paws and razor-sharp claws emerge as something enormous steps onto the battlefield. The Leopard King finally appears, roaring before the skeleton army, while crimson markings glow across its body. Peter's eyes widen in surprise. He never expected to encounter the dungeon boss this early. Without wasting another second, he orders every undead soldier to surround the beast and eliminate it. The giant predator explodes forward like a runaway freight train, smashing through the defensive formation using nothing but raw momentum. One lightning-fast swipe tears through the air, scattering armor fragments and shattered bones everywhere. That health bar came with anger issues. Watching the exchange, Peter realizes the monster moves so quickly that organized formations are practically useless. The Leopard King continues ripping apart skeleton after skeleton, and Peter quickly calculates his army will be wiped out long before dealing meaningful damage. Seeing no alternative, the young necromancer grips his arcane scythe as chaotic energy surges around him. Long crimson streams of sinister power spread across the battlefield, twisting the air and staining the dungeon red. Above them, a colossal sphere of blazing dark energy forms, crushing the atmosphere beneath its overwhelming gravity. Peter smiles coldly as he activates his newly acquired ability to test its full range. Then, in a commanding voice, he shouts directly at the boss. "Look at me!" Almost instinctively, the gigantic beast obeys, lifting its head to reveal rows of deadly fangs. The instant its eyes meet the spell, crushing terror grips its heart and locks its body in place. Peter watches with satisfaction as the completely paralyzed monster proves his fear skill works exactly as intended. Floating ghostly skulls surrounded by scarlet flames transform the battlefield into a living nightmare. Even the boss folds under the pressure. Bound by invisible fear, the Dungeon King slowly lowers its claws and lets out a weak whine, unable to move even a single muscle. Remaining perfectly calm, Peter estimates the fear effect will only last 5 seconds because of the boss's superior level. He merely shrugs and points out that nothing stops him from casting the spell again, while creating another gunpowder skeleton. Without wasting a heartbeat, he summons an entire squad of undead bombers, each balancing a massive gunpowder barrel on its head. A cold glare settles over Peter's face as flames dance across his fingertips, and with one final gesture, he unleashes his army. An endless chain of explosions erupts across the battlefield, swallowing the giant leopard in a sea of fire. The boss lets out a deafening howl, struggling to survive while completely engulfed by the inferno. Bro's health bar just became a suggestion. The instant the fear effect wears off, the beast bursts through the flames in a desperate leap, aiming straight for the explosive barrels. Peter doesn't flinch. Instead, he calmly lifts his dark scythe and decides it's time to cast his terror skill again. The monster smashes through shattered wood, sending debris everywhere at the exact moment Peter releases the spell. A colossal crimson eye opens high above the battlefield, flooding the entire area with suffocating pressure. Instantly consumed by absolute fear, the giant predator freezes again, becoming the world's saddest boss fight. Crowd control said, "Sit." The chained explosions continue uninterrupted until the helpless monster disappears beneath smoke and fire. When the dust finally settles, Peter smiles as the system rewards him with an enormous amount of experience for defeating the dungeon ruler. The victory pushes him to level 11, confirming that the rewards inside this hidden rift are ridiculously generous. Definitely not your average side quest. Checking his status window, Peter realizes leveling up unlocked yet another broken restriction during the middle of the battle. A floating notification announces a brand new ability called Ethereal Form, allowing him to temporarily become intangible. Peter stares at the description in disbelief after realizing the technique grants complete immunity to all incoming attacks. Balanced? Never heard of her. After thinking it through, he concludes the only downside is its brutal mana consumption, meaning he'll need a much larger energy pool to maintain it. A strange golden reflection suddenly catches his attention from across the rocky field. Moments later, a gigantic pillar of golden light pierces the sky, signaling that the defeated boss dropped a legendary item. Meanwhile, in a quiet, noble district, an elegant mansion towers over the surrounding estates. Inside, Adrian Blackwood lounges on a luxurious couch with a wine glass in hand, his face twisted by pure hatred. He can't stop replaying the image of Peter standing in the courtyard wrapped in that terrifying aura. The memory of being publicly humiliated before the entire academy keeps eating away at him. That replay button is working overtime. Consumed by rage, Adrian crushes the wine glass in his bare hand, letting crimson liquid drip to the floor. A concerned butler rushes over, but Adrian orders him to clean the mess because an important visitor is about to arrive. Grinding his teeth, the proud heir silently vows to make Peter pay for disgracing him. The elderly white-haired servant enters once more and respectfully announces that the guest has arrived. Without hesitation, Adrian orders every servant to leave the room immediately. Privacy settings enabled. Before the butler exits, Adrian tells him to send the visitor in and make sure nobody interrupts the meeting. A man draped in a long navy blue cloak walks into the mansion, carrying an unusual enchanted bow across his back. Even the servants whisper nervously in the hallway about the sinister aura surrounding the newcomer. The veteran butler, visibly sweating, quietly warns the younger staff that the rumors barely scratch the surface of how dangerous this man truly is. Known throughout the underworld as a flawless mercenary, the archer climbs the staircase while stories spread of him killing targets from miles away. Cedric calmly introduces himself, adding that his fee doubles only if women or children are involved. Adrian sighs with relief and explains the target is simply a young man. Cedric almost sounds disappointed by how easy the assignment seems. Man wanted a challenge and got homework. The mercenary drops onto the couch and casually stretches his legs before remarking that the person they're hunting must be an extraordinary fighter. Adrian freezes, blinking in confusion as he asks how Cedric figured that out. A smug grin appears on the assassin's face. If someone as dangerous as you needs outside help, then your enemy must be even worse. The logic hurts almost as much as the insult. Cedric calmly concludes that only an exceptional warrior would force a capable client to hire a professional killer. Swallowing his pride, Adrian reluctantly admits the target is only a young necromancer. Cedric frowns in confusion, reminding him that necromancers are considered weak because they normally need 30 minutes just to summon one skeleton. Adrian can only force out an awkward laugh and nod, burdened by the humiliation. Cedric bursts into mocking laughter. He can't believe a supposedly powerful noble needs an assassin to eliminate a rookie necromancer. That's one expensive skill issue. Adrian angrily argues that Peter levels up at an impossible speed and has already become the Dragon Guild's greatest rising talent. The mention of the legendary guild instantly wipes the smile from Cedric's face. His posture stiffens as he finally recognizes the danger behind the assignment. Adrian starts sweating, convinced the mercenary is about to refuse the mission. Instead, Cedric flashes a chilling grin and loudly announces that the price has just doubled. Business is booming. Relieved beyond words, Adrian quickly assures him that money isn't an issue for the Blackwood family. Satisfied, Cedric asks for nothing more than a photograph and basic information, promising he'll track the target down without difficulty. A sinister smile spreads across the assassin's face as he guarantees the young necromancer will disappear without leaving a trace. Driven entirely by revenge, Adrian reveals he already has detailed information, including exactly where Peter lives. As he heads toward the stairs, Cedric remarks that the assignment should be simple, though he casually notes there's always a chance something unexpected could happen. An overwhelming killing intent suddenly fills the room as the mercenary turns back and fixes Adrian with a deadly stare. "Are you questioning my abilities?" Adrian nearly chokes under the crushing pressure and frantically waves his hands, insisting he never doubted him for a second. Without another glance, the mysterious archer turns away and coldly remarks that he doesn't take advice from a brat who lost to a novice. Humiliated to his core, the proud-haired student crushes his fist in frustration after being treated like a worthless nobody yet again. Drained in both body and mind, he drops onto the worn red couch, forcing himself to think about nothing except his final objective. With wild eyes and a smile that definitely shouldn't be trusted, he mutters that the method doesn't matter as long as his enemy disappears. Yeah. Therapy was no longer on the table. Inside the hero's tiny room, the coward screams his rival's name. Without a sound, a violet crack rips open the fabric of space. The monster's glowing reward turns out to be a legendary dagger that boosts agility, while greatly reducing the cost of spatial magic. After inspecting it, the necromancer decides it doesn't fit his combat style, but figures it'll fetch a nice price later. Free loot is free loot. Feeling the item's power, the boy silently admits he owes the old sage a great debt for handing him the key to such an unbelievably rare rift. With everything finished, Peter steps through the portal, planning to get some sleep before tomorrow's important meeting. Dark energy floods the tiny apartment as a tall, vertical gateway materializes in the middle of the dim room. The tournament champion quietly sets foot back inside his home, ending the unbelievable adventure that consumed his entire night. Wrapped in fading mystical energy, he glances around the cramped apartment and realizes his own room feels more like a prison than the dungeon ever did. That's a sentence your landlord never wants to hear. The peaceful silence explodes as a glowing arrow smashes through the window, reducing the glass to countless shards. The projectile tears straight through the young man's chest at terrifying speed. It passes harmlessly through him because his body is still in its intangible state. Talk about accidentally unlocking plot armor DLC. The deadly shot continues forward, piercing the magical projection before burying itself deep into the wooden floor. Perched atop a distant building, the merciless mercenary lowers his bow, convinced the assassination couldn't have gone more perfectly. Meanwhile, inside the famous guild headquarters, the organization's president stares in amazement at the champion's recorded total of 200 talent points. The elderly advisor calmly reminds him that the current leader became a legend with far fewer points, proving just how extraordinary the boy truly is. Looking across the city through the window, the commander declares that such a well-trained young man could completely reshape the nation's military future. Curious now, the armored leader turns around and asks one simple question. What class does this prodigy belong to? Still leaning on his wooden staff, the long-bearded elder calmly answers that the boy is a necromancer. The room instantly goes silent. The organization's leader struggles to process something that absurd. A necromancer? Yeah, nobody had that on the bingo card. Frowning, the president argues that low-tier classes are infamous for their painfully limited magical growth. With unwavering confidence, the old advisor replies that this young genius shattered every limit his class was ever supposed to have. The warrior's golden eyes begin glowing in the darkness, his curiosity growing by the second. Standing proudly, the elder announces that Peter has reached the incredibly rare level of unrestricted undead summoning. The revelation leaves the president stunned as he realizes the boy could command an immortal army by himself, as long as he has enough magical energy. Casual Tuesday, apparently. Wanting every detail, the leader asks whether the young man relied on powerful magical equipment. The elder simply replies that Peter fought using nothing more than an ordinary staff. Deeply impressed by someone capable of breaking the very rules of the class system, the commander insists he must meet the boy immediately. Without wasting another second, the golden-eyed president demands Peter's exact current location. Remaining perfectly calm, the advisor reveals that he entrusted the young necromancer with a special key to explore a dimensional rift. The president immediately points out how isolated and dangerous that place is. The old sage reassures him that he specifically instructed Peter to assemble a support party before entering. Confident in the boy's abilities, he concludes that even a basic healer should be enough to keep him alive. That's confidence, or the boldest prediction imaginable. Lost in thought, the armored commander concludes that the young necromancer may become the nation's greatest hope in the coming war. Far away, a blazing blue arrow slices across the night sky, weaving between towering buildings. The glowing projectile crashes through an apartment window, destroying everything in its path. Before anyone can react, the merciless spell slams directly into the protagonist's back while he's still wearing his familiar black suit. Watching from the rooftop in the distance, Cedric Thornhill confirms the target's elimination, quietly regretting that it took him so long to obtain a magic key. Gripping his energy bow, the assassin wears a sinister grin, eager to enjoy the aftermath as he patiently waits for the boy's teammates to discover the supposedly lifeless body. Instead, the fallen figure dissolves into nothing but drifting strands of dark light. Cedric freezes. That was not in the mission briefing. Unable to understand what just happened, the hunter notices the portal closing and grows suspicious over the complete absence of survivors leaving the apartment. Meanwhile, sitting on the dark bedroom floor, Peter slowly recovers from the devastating attack as Cedric finally realizes the reckless mission was carried out completely alone. Breathing heavily and utterly exhausted, the young man looks upward through the darkness, admitting he had just come terrifyingly close to dying. Thinking back to the attack, Peter silently thanks his newly acquired ethereal form for making him intangible and saving his life. Surrounded by broken glass, he grumbles about almost getting killed for absolutely no reason. His left eye suddenly ignites with a blazing crimson glow as his deadly gaze ability activates under overwhelming rage. Seeing an enormous red eye manifest across the sky, the villain instinctively stumbles backward, unable to believe his attack had landed cleanly. Hit by an intense wave of supernatural fear, the mercenary panics when every muscle in his body suddenly locks in place. Forcing himself to stay rational, Cedric convinces himself that the massive distance should prevent Peter from maintaining the effect, while also closing the gap. Clenching his teeth, he decides the only option is to endure the mental assault, convinced he still has several paths to victory. Sometimes the strategy really is don't panic. Frozen atop the rooftop, the assassin keeps his eyes fixed on the apartment window, praying only to survive until the spell finally ends. Watching everything with chilling composure, Peter quietly reveals that his original plan had been to fake his own death and lure the enemy into coming closer. A skeleton warrior suddenly appears behind the cowardly sniper, prompting the protagonist to point out that he always keeps a backup plan ready. The mercenary's eyes fly open as he spots the undead soldier and desperately wonders where it came from. Guess paranoia was justified after all. Moving with ruthless speed, the skeletal fighter drives its silver blade straight into the marksman's back. The fear effect instantly ends when the veteran hunter blasts the skeleton apart with a burst of magical energy. Proud of reaching level 18, the shooter laughs at the idea that a lone skeleton could ever break through his defenses. Talk about celebrating a little too early. With his mobility restored, the man in the hat prepares to turn his young opponent into a very painful pincushion. Then, without warning, terror locks his body once again, leaving him frozen and drenched in cold sweat as the familiar spell returns. Standing alone in the empty street, Peter calmly casts the deadly skill, sending the massive crimson eye blazing across the night sky. The mercenary trembles as he recalls that necromancers supposedly need 30 minutes to create each undead servant, convincing himself he can still exploit that weakness. Bro was working with outdated patch notes. Facing the towering buildings, Peter admits his opponent is incredibly dangerous, sitting a full 5 levels above him. Tightening his grip on his magical scythe, the young necromancer smiles, knowing he has plenty of soldiers in reserve. Dark souls swirl together with violet flames, erupting around Peter as an enormous undead legion answers his call. The assassin can only stare in horror, unable to process the ridiculous number of skeletons materializing before him. Realizing Adrian's intelligence report completely underestimated Peter, the shooter feels every advantage vanish in an instant. Intel so bad it deserved a refund. Pointing toward the rooftop, Peter orders his undead army to attack immediately. The skeletons race up the skyscraper's walls like oversized spiders, climbing at astonishing speed. Ignoring gravity entirely, the undead charge upward with swords and spears in hand. Their combined weight and relentless momentum smash through massive glass panels as they continue their assault. Within moments, dozens of skeletal warriors flood the rooftop, surrounding the trapped sniper from every direction. One of them instantly leaps forward, swinging a darkened axe before the mercenary can even react. Speedrun any %, rooftop invasion. Watching from the street below, Peter quietly wishes he had learned a spell that let him fly. Backed into a corner, the terrified mercenary begs to negotiate directly with whoever commands the undead. Peter suddenly appears before him, sarcastically asking about that supposed usefulness the assassin mentioned earlier. Resting one hand against the rooftop's edge, the young man casually asks the villain to explain his offer in greater detail. Now kneeling in complete surrender, Cedric promises to reveal the identity of the person who hired him, if he's allowed to live. Peter simply says the name Adrian Blackwood, and calmly states he'll deal with that problem himself. Cedric's entire brain crashes. Completely stunned, the mercenary desperately demands to know how his target learned that secret. Growing more desperate, he even offers free assassination services. Peter dryly reminds him that taking that career path always comes with occupational hazards. Performance review unsuccessful. Meeting the assassin's gaze without the slightest emotion, Peter admits the man actually does have tremendous value. Shivering in fear, Cedric hears the horrifying explanation that his true worth will only appear after he dies. Without showing even a hint of mercy, the necromancer raises his imposing magical scythe and orders the skeletons to execute the kneeling mercenary. Facing his executioner, the man in the hat desperately pleads for mercy, while a skeleton lifts its axe. The immortal warrior swings with overwhelming force and delivers the finishing blow. A crimson spray stains Peter's calm face as the defeated man's screams echo across the sleeping city. No dramatic comeback this time. Once the execution is over, Peter quietly walks toward the lifeless marksman lying across the rooftop's cold concrete. The exhaustion finally catches him, and he collapses to his knees, his heavy magical scythe slipping from his grasp. Panting heavily and soaked in sweat, the young warrior tilts his head back in relief, thankful the hunt is finally over. Checking his remaining mana, he realizes his strongest abilities drained an enormous amount of magical energy. Now all that's left is to recover. Peter reflects on the tactic that saved him, summoning a skeleton into the hallway the instant the ambush began. That hidden minion received one simple command: to secretly follow the stealthy sniper and strike when the opportunity appeared. While the skeleton tracked its prey, Peter deliberately used himself as bait to lure the mercenary into committing. Risky plan, somehow it actually worked. Using the massive scythe as support, he slowly forces himself back onto his feet, while complaining about the awful feeling of completely draining his mana. Looking at the fallen sniper, Peter admits the enemy possessed extraordinary talent for landing flawless long-range shots. Already planning ahead, he pulls out a small artifact, and silently hopes it won't consume the last of his remaining energy. Dark aura pours from his weapon as he points it toward the corpse to begin another ritual. The system removes an evolutionary restriction, allowing one undead servant to absorb the essence of defeated enemies and grow stronger. A glowing sphere of violet energy forms in Peter's hands, capturing every trace of the elite hunter's sinister essence. He positions an ordinary skeleton before him, preparing to infuse it with the harvested power and force its evolution. Violent magical flames engulf the undead completely, signaling the permanent destruction of its class limit. The torrent of dark energy grows even stronger, wrapping the skeleton inside a spiraling vortex of radiant dust and shadow. Inside the mystical storm, the creature's frame expands dramatically before it takes on the appearance and clothing of a mercenary. Character evolution cutscene activated. System messages confirm an incredible rank evolution, unveiling the birth of a high-level undead marksman. The newly evolved summon now wears a dark hat, opens piercing blue eyes, and gains deadly arrows along with exceptional tracking abilities. Peter smiles with satisfaction, praising the terrifying accuracy of his newest undead soldier, while looking forward to the strength they'll gain together in the future. A red warning flashes across the system panel, announcing that the newly evolved marksman cannot complete its evolution without holding a weapon. Looking at his undead soldier, Peter mutters to himself, trying to figure out what his ritual is still missing. He rests a hand on his chin and calmly analyzes every detail instead of rushing. Rare footage of someone actually reading the error message. A spark lights up in Peter's eyes as he finally realizes exactly what the system wants. A beautifully curved bow forged entirely from blue magical energy materializes in midair, the very weapon the mercenary once used. Picking it up, Peter notices the impressive bonus of 50 extra magic points. He gives a faint smile, though he can't help thinking the bow's enchantment feels a little underwhelming for such a legendary item. Expectation, game-breaking artifact. Reality, plus 50 mana. Without hesitation, he hands the glowing weapon to the skeleton in the hat, satisfying the system's final requirement. Brilliant blue energy wraps around the undead, completing its evolution at last. Watching the transformation finish, Peter concludes that an undead sniper was never meant to fight without a proper bow. Supporting himself with one hand, he tells the skeleton to keep using that weapon until they find something better. A dark mist gathers around the minion's skull as it loyally replies that it will faithfully obey every order from its master. Peter freezes in surprise, realizing just how naturally his undead ally can speak. The skeleton's empty eye sockets blaze with blue light as it verbally reaffirms its unwavering loyalty. Yeah, this skeleton came with dialogue unlocked. Dropping to one knee, the undead shooter politely asks its master for a special favor. With complete respect, it requests the honor of receiving a proper name. Caught off guard by that level of self-awareness, Peter repeats the request aloud while searching for the perfect answer. He quietly realizes calling the skeleton by nothing but its class would sound awkward forever. Looking at his kneeling servant, Peter decides his very first evolved creation deserves a meaningful name. Main character naming arc acquired. Silence settles over the rooftop as Peter sinks into memories buried deep within his past. Suddenly his mind drifts back to another life, to the ruins of a shattered building. Among broken concrete and debris sits a mysterious silver-haired soldier, effortlessly handling a sniper rifle. Dressed in tactical gear, the younger Peter asks whether that massive weapon can really eliminate the enemy commander. Beside him, a burly ally laughs, calling him rookie and asking if he's seriously never heard of the legendary marksman. Grinning proudly, the big man boasts that the sniper has taken down targets from 4 miles away. Balanced beside a shattered window, the quiet soldier calmly prepares his shot, while his companion calls him the Distant Reaper. That nickname goes unnecessarily hard. Looking through the scope, the sniper spots enemy troops abusing helpless captives inside a fortified compound. The ruthless commander orders every hostage executed without showing the slightest mercy. The silver-haired shooter never hesitates. His finger squeezes the trigger. The rifle's thunderous blast echoes across the ruined city as the bullet tears through the air at incredible speed. The enemy commander barely has time to notice the incoming round before it reaches him. One perfectly placed shot ends his life instantly right in front of his horrified subordinates. The camp erupts into total chaos as terrified soldiers scream and scramble for cover. Mission failed successfully. for the bad guys. Young Peter stares in amazement, thrilled by the impossible distance of that shot. His eyes shine with pure admiration after witnessing such overwhelming skill firsthand. Unable to contain his excitement, the eager rookie begs the veteran to reveal the secrets behind his incredible marksmanship. The experienced soldier answers with a small, reassuring smile. "I'm Archer." Then he calmly asks the rookie for his own name. Back in the present, Peter opens his eyes with deep gratitude for the memory that just resurfaced. With genuine respect, the necromancer declares that his hooded skeleton will proudly bear the honored name Archer. The undead smiles broadly, accepting its new name with heartfelt gratitude and absolute loyalty. Not every promotion comes with a custom title. Peter extends his hand and calmly orders Archer to return to the undead army. The system panel updates, revealing that only one of his 5 available evolved soldier slots has been filled. After considering that strict limit, Peter decides every future evolution must be reserved for only the most valuable warriors. Let the min-maxing begin. Breathing a sigh of relief, he realizes wasting those precious slots on ordinary monsters would have been a catastrophic mistake. A massive green magic circle suddenly appears behind him, making Peter instantly suspect another attack. Turning toward the mysterious glow, he quickly recognizes the same teleportation circle used during the novice examination. Floating above the ground, the long-bearded advisor emerges and explains that the Supreme Leader sent him personally to ensure Peter's safety. The elderly sage stares wide-eyed at the devastated rooftop, struggling to process the aftermath surrounding him. Looking at Peter's calm smile in the middle of such overwhelming destruction, the old man silently tries to reconstruct the battle. Well, somebody definitely skipped the minor property damage option. A tense silence hangs over the rooftop as the cold early morning wind sweeps across the sleeping city. Trying to piece everything together, the elder confirms that Peter was ambushed immediately after finishing the trial. Peter quietly realizes he dismissed Archer at the very last second, barely preventing his secret from being exposed. Keeping his usual stern expression, the advisor asks what happened to Peter's teammates. The question leaves the young necromancer stammering without an answer. Uh-oh. Mandatory lecture incoming. Heavy silence follows as the elder fixes the stubborn prodigy with a deeply disappointed stare. Finally losing his patience, the wise man raises his voice and scolds Peter for recklessly ignoring his repeated warnings. He emphasizes that Peter's death would have been disastrous for the nation. Peter, however, calmly insists he can safely conquer dungeons that match his own level. Seeing the rookie's overwhelming confidence, the elderly advisor is reminded of the same reckless arrogance the guild leader had when he was younger. Meanwhile, Peter finds the timing of this unexpected visit suspicious, since they were supposed to meet in the morning, not before sunrise. The old mage calmly explains that he has direct instructions to bring the newcomer to the guild headquarters immediately. Glancing at the mercenary's body on the ground, Peter accepts the order and prepares to leave with him. Before the boy can worry about anything, the advisor assures him that the cleanup team will handle the investigation and remove all traces from the rooftop. Apparently, even crime scenes get customer service here. Walking beside his escort, Peter notices something strange. There is no portal waiting for their transportation. He remembers the mage creating one moments earlier, and assumes the spell must require a lengthy preparation period. The advisor quickly corrects him, explaining that he uses established spatial routes created by veteran mages through advanced movement magic. Then he drops another piece of information that makes Peter freeze. The gray-haired elder reveals he's secretly placed a tracking seal directly onto Peter's clothes. Peter's eyes widen as he realizes someone literally installed magical GPS on him. Privacy settings completely ignored. Trying to ease his concern, the old man explains it was only a temporary mark designed for tracking and that it has already vanished. Right on cue, the glowing symbol fades from the back of Peter's dark jacket like smoke disappearing into the air. After reaching the street, the two watch as a luxurious black limousine quietly stops outside the building. 2 perfectly dressed employees from the famous guild immediately bow deeply before the respected elder. Keeping his usual calm expression, the advisor orders them to investigate the rooftop and identify the deceased target. Watching their respectful behavior, Peter realizes these workers must be part of the guild's support division. The experienced mage opens the limousine door and tells Peter to enter quickly, warning him not to keep the legendary leader waiting. Once the two step inside the expensive vehicle, the employees remain outside as the limousine drives away. One worker watches with envy, amazed that such a special recruit is being personally escorted by the guild's highest figures. His partner nervously wipes sweat from his forehead after using a skill to inspect Peter's information. The first employee immediately assumes they are dealing with a rare genius. Then the other reveals the shocking truth. Peter's official rank is extremely average. The man is completely stunned, remembering that even ordinary guild positions require exceptional talent. Imagine applying for a job and the recruiter says your stats are suspiciously normal. Staring at the road, the observer theorizes that Peter detected the hidden scan and intentionally altered his displayed information. The other worker argues that this kind of inspection usually goes unnoticed, even by the strongest veterans. The guild spy breaks into a cold sweat after realizing Peter not only noticed the probe but also created fake data instantly. Meanwhile, inside the limousine, Peter sits quietly in the back seat, nervous about his upcoming meeting with the strongest leader in the nation. Sensing his tension, the advisor tells him to stay focused and calm his thoughts. Soon, the vehicle arrives at its destination and slowly stops before a massive fortress glowing beneath the night sky. Peter stares in amazement at the enormous headquarters of the Azure Dragon Guild. The young man follows behind his master, taking in the overwhelming sight. The two eventually stop before a gigantic metal gate carved with the image of a winged dragon. The enormous entrance slowly opens, revealing the inner courtyard of the most powerful organization in the country. As they walk through the endless corridors, armored guards greet the guild's vice president with absolute respect. The gray-haired elder maintains his commanding presence and orders the knights to escort him directly to the guild leader. Two heavily armed warriors lead the way while Peter silently follows behind. Watching them carefully, Peter notices the incredible equipment worn by the level 50 paladins. These guards are basically walking tanks. When they reach a massive steel door, one of the guards explains that his rank is too low to enter beyond that point, and respectfully steps away. The white-bearded mage thanks the soldiers for their valuable assistance. Standing before the enormous armored entrance, the advisor tells Peter that the recruit himself must open the door. Peter swallows nervously when he realizes that even elite warriors are treated like ordinary soldiers inside this military powerhouse. With all his strength, the young man pushes the massive metal door open. Bright light floods through the room. At the far end of the luxurious office, the imposing guild leader stands before a giant window overlooking the entire city. The powerful warrior lists every dangerous achievement Peter accomplished, and the terrifying level of the mercenary he defeated. Impressed by how quickly the guild uncovered everything, Peter recognizes the frightening efficiency of their intelligence network. The leader places his hands on the desk and explains that even talented fighters struggle against enemies 3 levels above them. Then, with a sharp gaze, he asks how a simple beginner managed to completely destroy an opponent 7 levels stronger. The commander points out the obvious flaw. Peter's slow undead summons should never have been able to stop a sniper capable of firing deadly long-range attacks. The armored leader rises with overwhelming authority and asks the question that matters most. How many secrets are you hiding? Under the pressure of the interrogation, Peter's eyes widen as he begins feeling an immense killing aura filling the room. The guild leader's murderous intent spreads through the office, creating an almost unbearable magical pressure. Meanwhile, far away from the headquarters, the green-haired young man sits on a luxurious couch at home, listening to the automated message announcing that the call failed. The mastermind grips his phone tightly and grinds his teeth, remembering that the mercenary promised to finish the job quickly. His frustration turns into pure rage. The young man crushes the device in his hands, unable to understand why his ally completely disappeared. Then he throws himself onto the couch and angrily concludes that every mercenary is nothing but useless trash. With his options running out, the green-haired mastermind decides he has no choice but to call in outside assistance against his biggest threat. He grabs his second phone from the small wooden table, his hands shaking as he contacts the one person who might still save him. The mysterious person answers almost immediately. Swallowing his pride, the young man desperately begs for help. Hearing his younger brother's emotional explanation, the older man instantly loses his temper and demands to know who dared disrespect his family. A simple student made his little brother panic, and apparently that was enough to activate Big Brother mode. The veteran warrior angrily questions how someone so young managed to humiliate his beloved sibling. Still holding the phone tightly, the older brother tells him to calm down, explaining that he's currently finishing an important guild assignment. Standing before a massive level 35 polar bear raging in the frozen wilderness, he promises to return home soon and deal with the enemy. The interruption clearly annoys him. His fist tightens as violent flames gather around his arm. The warrior launches a devastating fire punch directly into the beast's face. The impact creates a massive explosion of flames. The enormous white bear is sent flying backward, sliding helplessly across the icy ground. With absolute confidence, Adrian Blackwood's brother ends the battle almost instantly, revealing a sinister dark tattoo spreading across his chest. Meanwhile, the Azure Dragon organization's grand headquarters towers over the city beneath the darkness of night. Inside, the guild leader continues pressuring Peter. He stomps heavily against the floor, demanding to know the true extent of the secrets the young man is hiding. Peter refuses to back down. He slowly spins his massive scythe, now covered in pure purple magic. The atmosphere is getting tense enough to cut with a knife. With a cold and defiant expression, Peter answers, "That is none of the leader's business." The response completely enrages the armored commander. The giant warrior locks eyes with the boy and declares that his downfall begins right now. A monstrous shadow shaped like a savage beast erupts from Victor's body, threatening to consume Peter completely. Peter immediately reacts. His left eye ignites red as he activates his deadly gaze ability. A wave of purple flame spreads across the luxurious office floor, summoning an entire army of armed undead soldiers. Holding his scythe tightly, the necromancer realizes he needs to find a way to break through the sealed room before things get worse. His ocular ability reaches full strength, attempting to slow down the furious warrior's movements. But Victor charges forward like a living train wrapped in dense dark energy. The Supreme Leader refuses to slow down, completely ignoring the dangerous illusions and fear effects thrown at him. The system reveals the truth. The fear effect barely lasted any time at all. Victor keeps advancing while mocking the technique as nothing more than a cheap trick. Peter freezes in disbelief. His strongest intimidation skill failed to make the giant hesitate even slightly. The rookie just discovered the boss has a skip cutscene button. Trapped inside the office, Peter steps back and orders his undead soldiers to delay the unstoppable enemy. Victor's brutal storm of flames tears through the fragile skeletons, reducing them into countless flying pieces of bone. Peter watches in horror as the commander walks straight through the remains of his army. Breathing heavily, the young necromancer quickly summons another creature and places it directly in Victor's path. This new undead is unlike anything before. Its head is a massive skull made entirely from unstable gunpowder flames. The explosive minion carries a huge wooden barrel while Peter commands it to destroy the entire office structure. Meanwhile, Victor continues his advance without hesitation, his glowing eyes showing absolutely no concern. The man is basically walking through an apocalypse like he's late for dinner. A deafening explosion erupts. Fire completely engulfs the warrior, filling the entire room with a blazing shockwave. Watching the enormous fireball, Peter smiles confidently and notices his opponent's strange habit of simply standing there and taking every attack. Apparently, Victor's defense strategy is just tank everything. Riding the momentum, Peter summons dozens of explosive skeletons, giving the giant exactly what he seems to want. More explosions, and more explosions. The chain reaction shakes the upper floors of the heavily protected guild headquarters. Outside on the street, guards stare at the building, confused by the unbelievable noise coming from a supposedly soundproof office. One guard concludes that the new prodigy must possess terrifying destructive power, which explains why the higher-ups are paying so much attention to him. Inside the room, Peter is exhausted from the massive mana consumption. He grips his scythe tightly, trying to recover even a small amount of strength. Looking at the enormous cloud of smoke, he believes no warrior could possibly survive that concentrated barrage. The dust slowly clears, and Victor is standing there, completely unharmed. Not a single scratch marks his silver armor. Peter's left eye widens immediately. The young necromancer realizes just how absurdly powerful his opponent truly is. Sweat runs down his face as he watches Victor endure everything without taking any damage. The commander casually wipes dust from his armor and releases a disappointed grunt. To him, Peter's attacks were barely worth noticing. Grinding his teeth in frustration, Peter decides to overwhelm the enemy with sheer numbers. Hundreds of explosive undead begin preparing for another assault. The boy spins his glowing scythe, gathering more tortured souls as Victor's massive shadow stretches across the room. Then it happens. A gigantic hand moves faster than Peter can react. The commander grabs him instantly. Victor lifts the young necromancer by the neck and demands to know every remaining secret he is hiding. The legendary warrior brings his face closer and orders him to provide satisfying answers. But instead of fear, Peter smiles. Resting his hands against Victor's armor, the boy simply stays silent. Then he raises his hand and gives the strongest warrior in the nation the middle finger. The ultimate beginner move. Disrespect the final boss. Victor stares at him through the magical smoke, his expression becoming even sharper. After a moment, the commander finally releases Peter. The young man drops down, coughing heavily as he desperately catches his breath. Then something unexpected happens. Victor smiles. The gray-haired leader calmly announces that the student has passed. Completely confused, Peter struggles to understand what kind of test he just completed. Sitting in the untouched chair behind the luxurious desk, Peter looks offended and asks if that entire disaster was actually just a test. The old advisor calmly explains that he requested a real life-or-death battle to measure the young fighter's courage and resolve. Rubbing his aching neck, Peter sarcastically questions the elder's definition of kindness, considering he basically arranged a surprise death match. Very considerate of you. Almost got me killed, though. Victor stands from his seat and defends his colleague, explaining that true potential only appears when someone can survive overwhelming pressure. The guild leader praises Peter's unusual summoning abilities and admits he was impressed by the young man's stubborn determination. Then he properly introduces himself as Victor Langley, the leader of the mighty guild. After hearing the legendary title, Peter keeps his calm expression and studies the commander carefully. The young necromancer stands and politely shakes Victor's hand, introducing himself. Meanwhile, the elderly advisor simply relaxes in his chair, watching the meeting unfold. No panic, no drama, just an old man enjoying the chaos he created. Walking around the luxurious office, Victor concludes that Peter's true strength still needs to be tested. A bad feeling immediately hits the young man. Peter nervously asks if the commander plans to continue with another physical battle. Victor quickly rejects that idea, explaining that the massive level difference between them would make a direct fight useless for gathering accurate data. Back in his chair, the guild leader proposes a different challenge. He wants Peter to clear a dangerous level 15 dungeon in the capital completely alone. The advisor immediately widens his eyes in concern. Even he knows this request is ridiculous. Peter stares into the distance and quietly repeats the conditions of conquering an apocalypse-level dungeon without any allies. Victor promises that even failure will still earn Peter a place in the guild. However, the young necromancer would lose the valuable sponsorship and resources attached to success. Peter doesn't hesitate for even a second. He raises his head confidently and accepts the challenge. The commander admires his courage, hoping that the boy's confidence comes from genuine strength rather than pure madness. Because in anime, confidence is either a superpower or a warning sign. Walking through the guild's massive corridors, Peter thinks about the monsters waiting inside the Apocalypse difficulty dungeon. With a 4-level disadvantage against the recommended challenge, he admits the situation will be troublesome. Still, he decides to fight for the honor of proving himself. Back in the noble hall, the old advisor warns Victor about the brutal conditions he placed on the young fighter. He remembers when Victor himself faced the same trial in the past. Even the future guild leader needed a team of 4 people just to survive. Looking out at the peaceful night outside the window, Victor explains that future global threats will require warriors far beyond ordinary standards. Turning away, the commander declares that whoever the organization chooses next must possess unstoppable determination. Meanwhile, Peter finally arrives at the entrance of the dangerous goblin dungeon. The system confirms that his mana has completely recovered, leaving him in perfect condition for the challenge ahead. Standing before the dark, rocky entrance, he prepares himself to face the system's highest difficulty setting. The dungeon responds with a terrifying crimson aura. A massive illusion of red skulls appears, warning him of the deadly danger inside. Peter doesn't even flinch. He walks straight into the scarlet flames of the dimensional portal. Absolute confidence or absolutely questionable decision-making. Sometimes they're the same thing. Nearby, dozens of experienced hunters freeze when they see a young man entering the dungeon alone. One hunter points in disbelief, announcing the horrifying difficulty level Peter selected. His partner refuses to believe someone would actually attempt something that insane. Inside the dark stone structure, Peter walks through the enormous tunnels while remembering lessons from his old school days. The darkness is filled with glowing eyes and terrifying creatures waiting to attack. The monsters reveal their savage nature immediately. A massive group of green goblins with sharp ears floods the cave, radiating pure apocalypse-level aggression. Carrying thick wooden clubs and dangerous spears, the small creatures laugh cruelly as they prepare to tear apart the intruder. Peter grips his beautiful dark scythe and counts the enemy forces. Almost 100 hostile goblins are waiting inside the tunnel. Holding his weapon firmly, the young necromancer summons his army and smiles. His advantage is simple: he has more soldiers. The skeleton warriors charge forward through the darkness with one mission: destroy everything in their path. The two armies collide violently. The battle tears through the cave while the system constantly announces experience gained. Peter smiles when he realizes Apocalypse difficulty dramatically increases his rewards. Checking his status, he proudly confirms that he has already reached level 11. The boy casually walks through the entrance, passing the bodies of countless defeated goblins scattered across the ground. Without wasting time, he follows his undead army deeper into the mysterious tunnels. Watching his summons fight, Peter admits one weakness: their limited range prevents him from safely clearing the entire dungeon while relaxing. For once, the lazy strategy actually sounds reasonable. But Peter quickly shakes off that thought with a small grin. The young necromancer speeds up his pace, making sure he doesn't fall behind his attacking army. A goblin carrying a spiked club suddenly receives a fatal sword strike from a skeleton, granting Peter another 1,000 experience points. Walking over the rocky ground with his scythe in hand, Peter notices something strange. The main path is far too empty for such a high-level dungeon. His expression becomes serious. He knows Victor Langley would never create a challenge that was just a casual sightseeing trip. Then, a massive crash echoes through the stone corridors. The entire dungeon shakes violently. The ceiling begins collapsing as rocks fall onto the path and dust fills the air. Something enormous is moving underground. Feeling the vibrations, Peter and his undead army stare into the darkness, waiting for whatever monster is approaching. Holding his scythe, he orders an immediate attack. The skeleton warriors rush forward into the tunnel. Seconds later, one of the summons is struck with overwhelming force. Its body instantly shatters apart. Peter freezes. He has never seen one of his creations destroyed that quickly before. Analyzing the situation with a cold expression, the experienced fighter reaches one conclusion: this must be the dungeon's final boss. Heavy footsteps shake the entire underground structure as the mysterious creature approaches. The decisive battle is about to begin. Hiding behind one of his own skull warriors, Peter watches the enemy's dramatic arrival and smiles. Nice entrance, really committed to the whole final boss aesthetic. The dust finally clears, revealing a massive armored monster standing directly in front of the advancing skeleton army. Looking at the creature's enormous body, Peter regrets not having enough time to transform his flames into explosive gunpowder barrels. No time for crafting. The boss fight timer is already running. Raising his magical scythe, the necromancer orders several skeletons to stall the giant while he prepares his deadly explosive units. The green-skinned dungeon boss looks down at the tiny undead warriors with complete contempt as they fearlessly charge forward. The monster casually swings its massive wooden club. Several skeleton soldiers are instantly swept away by the brutal attack. The bone wall collapses into fragments, but Peter uses that brief opening to begin his rapid explosive conversion. However, the giant's glowing eye shifts toward the back of the battlefield. It locks onto Peter. The creature's hatred immediately targets the true threat. With a furious roar, the monster lifts its heavy weapon and prepares a devastating long-range strike. Peter's expression changes. His left eye widens as he realizes the beast ignored every distraction and aimed straight at him. The attack crashes down with terrifying force. The metal-covered wooden club creates a massive shockwave, destroying the ground and sending clouds of dirt everywhere. The gigantic cave ruler exposes its disgusting teeth and unleashes a terrifying roar, seemingly ready to tear apart the entire dungeon. Peter has no time to escape. He instantly activates his ethereal ability, transforming his body into a magical mist. The attack passes through him harmlessly. Returning to normal, the exhausted necromancer lowers his head and admits that ability saved him once again. That skill is basically his emergency "please don't delete me" button. Dark energy begins surrounding Peter as his anger rises. His left eye burns crimson. With a cold expression, he declares that the battle has changed completely. A massive scarlet illusion tears through the darkness of the tunnel, projecting his deadly gaze directly onto the monster's back. The paralysis effect spreads across the battlefield. Peter calmly walks beside his skeletons carrying explosive barrels. The experienced hunter looks completely relaxed. To him, the frozen boss is no longer an enemy. It's just an ingredient waiting to be prepared. Spinning his scythe dramatically, Peter walks forward with his undead workers and proudly names himself the master chef of this battlefield. The protagonist smiles confidently as he prepares the real destruction. The skeletons stack gunpowder barrels around the paralyzed giant's feet. Peter announces that the feast is ready. Then everything explodes. A chain of deafening blasts completely engulfs the green monster in a giant fireball. The dungeon boss screams in agony as magical flames burn through its armor and tear apart its tough body. The enormous creature finally collapses onto the rocky floor. The system rewards Peter with more than 12,000 experience points. Peter holds his side, almost confused by how easy the victory was compared to what he expected. He didn't even need the dramatic 3-episode boss battle. Checking his glowing status screen, he sighs slightly after realizing the massive reward still wasn't enough to gain an entire level. Walking closer to the burned corpse, Peter remains alert. Something feels wrong. A dark and unsettling presence hangs in the air. He remembers from his old classes that completed dungeons normally create a magical guidance screen leading explorers toward the exit. But when he looks around, nothing appears. No exit marker, no warning screen, nothing. Peter carefully studies the walls and quickly notices the strange absence. His eyes widen as the answer becomes obvious. This dungeon has more than one boss. Thanks to his theoretical studies, he remembers that advanced dungeons only end after every major monster has been defeated. Immediately, Peter commands his undead army to search for the remaining targets. Entering another dark passage, the group encounters an ambush. A large number of heavily equipped goblins suddenly surround them. Peter doesn't show the slightest fear. A purple aura surrounds him as he recognizes the enemy forces. The goblins raise spears and shields. The skeleton army charges. Following their commander's orders, the undead overwhelm the green creatures. Watching the experience numbers rise with every defeated enemy, Peter realizes he is approaching the final stage of the dungeon. The army advances into a gigantic cavern filled with darkness. Countless monsters hide inside. Then a savage roar shakes the entire chamber. Peter focuses his vision into the shadows and immediately understands. That sound belongs to the next boss. The front line of skeleton soldiers is suddenly launched into the air. The endless swarm of small goblins was only the beginning. Larger, muscular creatures with green skin appear and begin smashing skeleton skulls with their fists. The enormous beast reveals its sharp teeth. It finds the endless waves of fragile undead strangely amusing. Persistent little things, aren't they? With hatred glowing in its eyes, the massive goblin warrior finally notices the human controlling everything. Peter's expression drops when he realizes the truth. There aren't two bosses. There are three. The three monstrous giants rise together, surrounded by more than 100 smaller creatures. Peter checks his remaining stats. After spending so much magic defeating the previous boss, he begins questioning whether his energy reserves are enough. One of the terrifying leaders roars with excitement, commanding the massive army to kill the intruder. The dungeon shakes as the beasts stomp across the ancient stone floor. They want nothing more than to tear apart the small human standing before them. Peter swallows his concern about his low mana. Then he grips his dark scythe and orders his army forward without hesitation. No retreat, no hesitation. The giant monsters charge with savage force. Even their own attacks show no mercy. The huge creatures swing heavy steel hammers and crush the undead forces caught in their path. With ridiculous strength, one beast uses its spiked weapon to obliterate the fragile skeleton warriors. The hammer crashes down. A poor skeleton is instantly destroyed, leaving a massive crack in the dusty stone floor. One shield-bearing undead tries to protect the front line by blocking an attack from a weaker enemy. But the battlefield only becomes more chaotic. Deadly spike traps suddenly erupt from the ground, piercing the invading undead with no chance to escape. Watching the destruction unfold, Peter notices something unexpected. The monsters are so consumed by bloodlust that they are even attacking each other. The difference in power is impossible to ignore. The weaker creatures can't even get close to the terrifying giants. Focusing on the situation with a cold mind, the strategist decides that his only chance is to use the next level reward to restore his nearly empty mana pool. With his crimson eye burning like a warning sign, the boy gambles everything on ranking up before his reserves completely collapse. Accepting the danger, the fearless student unleashes a terrifying storm of flames and shadows against the three monstrous bosses. The overwhelming pressure of his fear ability spreads across the battlefield, freezing the gigantic green beasts in place. The boy then calls out his most precious weapon and announces that this is finally the moment for his evolved ally to prove itself. The skeletal marksman enters the battlefield with its enchanted bow in hand, surrounded by a brilliant blue aura. Following his master's command, the undead archer unleashes a barrage of magical arrows, while Peter's remaining energy continues to disappear. The strategist locks onto the leftmost boss and instantly traps it with his terrifying gaze. No time is wasted as he converts the fallen souls into blazing explosive barrels. Because apparently the solution to every problem is just add more explosions. A massive detonation tears through the dungeon, releasing a wave of scorching heat directly into the frozen monster. Completely swallowed by the firestorm, the green giant takes catastrophic damage while remaining unable to move. The enormous beast crashes onto the rocky floor, rewarding Peter with over 12,000 experience points. The boy smiles as he realizes he only needs one more boss defeated to finally reach the next level. Meanwhile, every magical shot from his undead archer drains more of his remaining energy, forcing him to order the elimination of the second immobilized leader immediately. Leaning heavily on his giant scythe, the exhausted student feels his mana reserves reaching absolute zero. The battle scene makes him realize the brutal price of relying on such powerful abilities. And before he can recover, the final boss charges forward, raising its massive hammer to crush him. The protagonist struggles to remain standing, using his weapon as support while the monster's shadow completely covers him. In a desperate moment, he shouts for his loyal undead shooter. The skeleton archer fires an energy arrow that slices through the darkness of the cave at incredible speed. The magical projectile travels straight toward the green beast's head with perfect accuracy. The attack lands flawlessly, stopping the monster's advance instantly. The gigantic creature is defeated by the beautiful precision shot, dropping its weapon and granting another 12,000 experience points. A powerful shockwave spreads through the underground halls, confirming the evolution Peter desperately wanted. The system announces his achievement. Level 12 has finally been reached. Of course, the surviving boss immediately chooses violence and slams its giant hammer into the ground. The impact tears apart the rocks beneath them, creating a massive dust cloud as Peter barely escapes the devastating strike. Using the fresh mana restored from his level up, the strategist activates his ethereal form at the last possible moment. Talk about perfect timing. The universe really gave him a second chance and said, "Don't waste this." The furious green giant grinds its teeth in anger after missing the attack. Returning to solid form among the broken stones, Peter celebrates his unbelievable luck. With his magical reserves completely restored, his red eye shines once again as he prepares the counterattack. Taking control of the battle, the hero declares that his turn has arrived and unleashes a gigantic ocular projection. The terrifying spell overwhelms the monster, filling it with unstoppable fear. The beast trembles as panic takes control of its massive body. Walking calmly toward the frozen target, Peter orders his archer to deliver the finishing blow. The loyal undead warrior immediately obeys, drawing its magical bow and surrounding the weapon with brilliant energy. The charged arrow tears through the air and strikes the creature directly in the face. The massive brute falls, providing another huge amount of experience for its master. Watching the attack, Peter admits that his evolved soldiers are far stronger than he originally expected. His summons have surpassed the power of ancient monsters with the same level. That is usually when you know the balance team has stopped pretending. Looking at the evolution interface, the strategist begins planning how to use his remaining transformation opportunities. The system confirms that only 4 evolution slots remain available for his undead battalion. Even after losing their giant leaders, the remaining goblins tremble in fear before the young necromancer. Ignoring their desperation, Peter refuses to show mercy and declares that every monster here will become fuel for his army. A new wave of undead soldiers charges forward, completely overwhelming the remaining creatures. The battlefield becomes less of a fight and more of a very unfortunate cleanup operation. The skeletal archer prepares another long-distance shot as its master approaches. However, Peter gently lowers the creature's weapon and orders it to stop firing for a moment. He realizes that every powerful attack from his evolved soldier consumes a large portion of his precious mana. Looking at his nearly empty reserves, the boy understands that he cannot maintain an entire legion at this rate. Watching his undead army destroy the remaining enemies, he decides that increasing his magical capacity must become his next priority. One armored skeleton pierces through a green goblin, granting another 1,000 experience points to the group. The dungeon completion notification finally appears, and Peter smiles while remembering all the enemies he defeated. Near the fallen boss, glowing rewards descend like a shower of light. The necromancer walks forward to collect the items left behind. Meanwhile, far away, 2 exhausted adventurers sit on the rocky ground and complain about the terrifying death rate of the dungeon's extreme difficulty. One heavily armored warrior raises his exhausted face and talks about the crazy student who entered the place alone. His companion wipes away his sweat and assumes the reckless kid must have already escaped. Then suddenly, a massive golden bell echoes throughout the cave. The sound shakes the entire dimensional entrance. The 2 adventurers freeze in surprise as the buzz-cut warrior explains that a world record has just been broken. His bearded companion stares in disbelief, struggling to understand the impossible achievement announced by the dungeon. Because apparently someone clearing a nightmare dungeon alone wasn't dramatic enough, so the cave itself had to ring a victory alarm. Driven by curiosity, the two warriors rush toward the entrance, expecting to discover which legendary guild accomplished such a feat. Instead, the glowing announcement reveals the truth. Peter has cleared the entire dungeon completely alone. The young necromancer has created an unprecedented global record that shocks everyone who witnesses it. A massive crowd of adventurers gathers outside the abyss entrance, loudly debating the identity of the mysterious champion who shattered the record. The chaos only grows as the red portal of the dungeon spits out the figure everyone has been waiting for. Peter steps out of the magical vortex with a disappointed expression, completely unsatisfied with his rewards. After risking his life against nightmare-level monsters, the loot decided to give him a collection of oversized swords. Unfortunately, his entire army consists of ranged fighters, so those weapons are basically expensive decorations. The boy is pulled out of his thoughts when the noise around him becomes impossible to ignore. Looking up, he finds himself facing a literal crowd barrier made of stunned humans staring at him. Their faces are frozen in disbelief because the legendary dungeon conqueror is just a teenager. Peter has no idea why everyone looks like they just witnessed a miracle. The silent entrance suddenly erupts into madness as countless voices explode around him. Everyone points toward the young student, confirming that he is the person who broke the great world record. The crowd expected a massive muscular warrior leading the charge. Instead, they got a kid in a suit. Some of the girls immediately look disappointed after realizing there is no giant battle-hardened hero standing there. Hearing the ridiculous rumors spreading about his supposed identity as a legendary mage or warrior, Peter only becomes more confused. This situation is somehow more dangerous than the dungeon itself. Ignoring the chaos, the skilled fighter decides the best strategy is a tactical retreat. Several hunters surround him, pushing their phones forward and offering invitations from powerful guilds. The attention quickly becomes unbearable, forcing Peter to shove through the crowd and search for an escape route. Personal space has officially become the rarest resource in this dungeon. The necromancer slips between the rocky paths and escapes the swarm of excited explorers. Finally reaching a safe distance, Peter exhales in relief while checking his phone. Despite the cracked screen, the device still works, allowing him to report his successful mission to Elder Crowley. Meanwhile, inside the Grand Azure Dragon headquarters, Aaron Crowley continues arguing with the guild president about the extreme danger of the Nova's evaluations. The old advisor insists that losing such a promising talent because of an unreasonable test would be an unforgivable national tragedy. The president listens to the warnings with a tired expression before folding his hands and asking for another solution. Leaning against his wooden cane, Crowley proposes assigning an experienced healer to accompany the boy during future missions. The old man closes his eyes, imagining the disaster of humanity losing its greatest young talent because of one training accident. Even the strongest people still need someone to patch them up after doing something stupid. Moved by the elder's serious concern, the guild leader finally accepts the request. He allows a healing support member to join future expeditions. Crowley calmly accepts the decision and promises to follow the new arrangement. Picking up his white communication device, the elder realizes he needs to warn Peter before the reckless rookie enters another deadly dungeon. But before he can make the call, Peter's name suddenly appears on his glowing phone screen. Crowley's tired blue eyes widen as he fears the worst. The fearless prodigy calling first usually means either a disaster or something completely absurd. Answering the phone, the elder explains that he already spoke with the president and received permission to send support members into the dungeon. However, Peter immediately interrupts him. Holding his cracked phone, the young man calmly explains that he only called to report his achievement. The elder freezes, his expression changes completely as he asks Peter to repeat what he just said. Seeing Crowley's shocked reaction, the president turns around from his desk, wondering what happened. Still unable to process the information, the mage reveals that the student cleared the dungeon and broke a world record. The Blue Dragon president instantly rises from his chair with a huge smile. The impossible result has completely excited him. Seeing the rookie's unbelievable potential, the leader reaches out and demands the phone. Crowley carefully hands over the device as Peter's voice continues asking for the advisor. The president takes control of the conversation and directly asks whether the young man truly completed the challenge. Hearing a different voice, Peter immediately recognizes the legendary leader and confirms his victory inside the abyss. The massive man smiles proudly, showing his sharp teeth while praising the performance of the warrior he personally selected. Then his expression becomes serious. The guild leader tells Peter that they need to discuss important matters face to face. While walking down the long stairs outside the abyss, Peter asks if he should immediately head to headquarters. Looking out from his giant office window, the president refuses. Instead, he says he already has another location prepared. Later that night, Peter arrives at the luxurious restaurant chosen by the guild leader. The young necromancer admires the beautiful traditional design of the establishment. However, his confidence drops slightly when he notices the president has not arrived yet. Standing outside alone, he hesitates. Entering a fancy restaurant is somehow scarier than fighting monsters. Checking his wallet, Peter remembers he only has 10 gold coins because he has not sold his dungeon rewards yet. Taking a deep breath, he reminds himself that he has faced countless beasts. A restaurant cannot possibly be worse. With renewed confidence, the boy walks through the glowing entrance while trying to look completely normal. A receptionist welcomes him, and Peter awkwardly confirms that he has a reservation for room 1. The woman's expression changes immediately. That room number is clearly not something ordinary customers use. She asks him to show his identification data. Peter activates his floating status interface, revealing his name and rare shadow focus class. After verifying the information, the employee confirms the reservation and welcomes him inside. The receptionist assumes the young visitor must be an important guest personally invited by the Blue Dragon president. Meanwhile, Peter walks through the restaurant with a calm expression, hands inside his pockets like a true shadow master. A waiter wearing an elegant suit approaches and politely guides him toward the reserved area. The young warrior follows through the luxurious dining hall, observing the wealthy guests around him. At another table, a dark-haired man in formal clothing silently eats a large plate of meat. He sits alone, focused entirely on his meal. The mysterious man wears an annoyed expression, already realizing something went wrong. He concludes that his ally failed the assassination mission and feels humiliated by the failure. While enjoying his meal, the arrogant man confidently declares that Peter's defeat is only a matter of time once his brother completes the assassination mission. Meanwhile, the necromancer calmly walks toward the restricted section of the restaurant, completely unaware of the storm waiting beside him. He casually passes right by the dark-haired man's table. The villain freezes the moment he recognizes the young warrior. The rookie he thought was dead is standing there alive. The man's grip tightens around his fork as jealousy consumes him, promising to crush Peter using the endless power of his family's fortune. His anger explodes, causing him to slam his hand against the table and knock over several glasses. Apparently, losing a fight wasn't enough. This guy also decided to fight the furniture. Putting on a mocking smile, the arrogant man asks whether Peter suddenly became rich enough to afford such an expensive restaurant. The waiter quickly approaches, asking if there is a problem. Peter only sighs, complaining that he somehow keeps running into irritating people everywhere he goes. The dark-haired man stands up and insults him, explaining that the minimum cost here is thousands of gold coins. Before the situation gets worse, the staff member steps between them and demands respect for their important guest. The arrogant man immediately freezes. He struggles to understand how this ordinary rookie could possibly be treated like royalty. After a brief silence, the villain bursts into laughter. He mocks Peter, calling him nothing more than a worthless orphan. The man insists that Peter is just another guild candidate with no real importance. But the young fighter refuses to be intimidated. A heavy dark aura suddenly erupts from his body, forcing the arrogant man to step backward in fear. The villain points at him with a trembling finger, warning that professional hunters are forbidden from fighting inside the restaurant. The floor manager quickly rushes over, desperately begging the special guest not to start a battle. Meanwhile, surrounded by shadows and floating skulls, Peter questions why he should lower his guard against someone like this. The pressure coming from the necromancer becomes so overwhelming that the employee starts believing his entire career is already over. Then Peter calmly ends the tension. He simply summons a glowing magical bow. The boy explains that he only wanted to show the weapon to his colleague. Holding the beautiful icy bow in front of him, Peter asks whether the man recognizes its owner. The arrogant man's expression changes instantly. Cold sweat runs down his face as he recognizes the weapon belonging to his blonde ally. The same ally Peter defeated. The necromancer looks down at him and reveals that he killed the bow's previous owner. Then he challenges the man to come up with another strategy. The villain immediately remembers Cedric's horrible fate. For the first time, he truly understands the terrifying difference in their strength. The rookie he underestimated is an absolute monster. Peter shows no mercy as he raises his hand and gathers a massive amount of magical energy. The arrogant man prepares for the worst, but suddenly Peter stops. Returning to his calm expression, the young warrior politely asks the waiter to guide him to the private room. The villain can only grit his teeth. He is furious that Peter reached the VIP area while he himself never managed to enter such an exclusive place. His jealousy turns into pure hatred. Across the enormous hall, he screams Peter's name. The Shadow Lord stops walking. Slowly turning his head, Peter sends a terrifying glare back at him. The arrogant man shouts that the Azure Dragon is not the only powerful organization protecting the nation. Before he can continue, a massive gloved hand grabs his shoulder. A deep voice asks if he is insulting another guild. The villain feels the crushing grip and turns around. Standing behind him is a giant warrior carrying a massive axe. Unable to control his anger, the man demands to know who dares interrupt him. He swings his axe forward, but a towering guard in green armor blocks the attack with a combat spear. The arrogant man immediately loses his confidence. Recognizing the famous bronze soldier, he realizes who this warrior must be protecting. At that moment, the respected guild elder appears beside the armored guard. He calmly explains that the man has committed serious offenses by insulting and attacking their leader. The villain drops his weapon onto the marble floor and instantly starts apologizing. He claims he had no idea who he was dealing with. The excuse does not impress the elder. The old counselor is furious and promises to teach the spoiled man a lesson he will never forget. Desperate to escape punishment, the coward points out that fighting is forbidden inside the restaurant. Then the guild president himself appears beside Aaron. The giant warrior questions the meaning of such pointless rules. A terrifying shadow covers the villain's body. The president declares that he is the one who decides the law here. The man's face turns completely pale. He finally understands he offended some of the strongest people in the entire country. A fist overflowing with terrifying magical energy appears in front of him. The president launches a devastating electric punch without hesitation. The impact sends the arrogant man flying across the entire hall. The force is so powerful that the restaurant's glass wall shatters completely. The villain crashes through the broken window and disappears outside. Through the dust and broken glass, the president extends his arm and delivers one final warning. Anyone who tries to hurt his chosen boy will suffer the same fate. Outside the building, pedestrians gather around the fallen man lying on the sidewalk. Everyone stares in disbelief at the person who was literally thrown through a high-floor window. The defeated villain remains unconscious as people rush to call an ambulance. Looking up at the giant hole above them, the crowd finally recognizes the figures standing there. It is President Victor and Vice Chancellor Aaron. The customers immediately begin whispering, trying to figure out who the mysterious VIP guest is. Then they realize the answer. It is the young boy standing beside them. Meanwhile, the restaurant manager is completely terrified. He realizes he almost disrespected the person his own boss admires most. The employee trembles before bowing deeply to the two legendary figures. Maintaining his serious expression, Aaron tells the manager they will continue without interruption, and orders him to clean up the damage. With a hand over his chest, Manager Jones promises that everything will be handled immediately. Turning toward his employees, Jones orders the hall to be cleared and the injured man sent to the hospital. As they continue through the restaurant corridors, Victor admits he was genuinely impressed by Peter's victory inside the abyss. The powerful leader praises the young warrior's calm and flawless attitude. Peter simply responds by politely greeting the two legendary figures. Returning the young warrior's courtesy, the old counselor points out that the incredible feast waiting for them is already starting to lose its heat. Watching the gentle elder, the necromancer silently admits he never expected such a kind man to reveal such a ruthless side. The counselor praises the teenager's performance, confirming that the two leaders were right about his extraordinary potential. Scratching his head awkwardly, the boy humbly explains that his victory was mostly thanks to luck and that he completely burned through his mana reserves. The group finally reaches the massive wooden doors marked as the first VIP room. Seeing the exhausted state of the rookie, Crowley reassures him that his magical energy will return the moment he enters. Inside awaits a gigantic rotating table, covered with countless expensive dishes from across the city. The young man stares at the luxurious spread and immediately realizes this meal probably costs more than most people's houses. Bro went from fighting monsters to fighting his own disbelief at a 5-star buffet. The elderly counselor gently pushes him forward and tells him to take a seat. The two influential leaders sit down as well, while Crowley encourages the teenager to eat freely without worrying about manners. The old mage explains that every dish was specially chosen to restore the hunter's exhausted magical abilities. Apparently, fantasy worlds also have support chefs, because even heroes need a mana refill somehow. Pointing at the glowing meals, Crowley reveals that specialized culinary healers create dishes capable of enhancing a person's attributes. These rare recipes can rapidly recover defense and accelerate mana regeneration. The young man processes the explanation and nods, finally understanding how these magical meals work. Using his chopsticks, the elder picks up a glowing blue steak and offers it to the teenager, promising a massive boost to his mana recovery. The moment he takes a bite, a blue aura surrounds the hunter as his magical reserves begin overflowing. The counselor smiles proudly but warns that the powerful effect will only last for a limited time. Before the boy can even react, the vice president offers another glowing ingredient designed to increase his physical strength. The exhausted fighter continues eating while receiving one enhancement after another from the two most important members of the guild. For someone who spent his life with ordinary meals, this was basically a legendary loot drop disguised as dinner. With his cheeks stuffed and his stomach finally satisfied, Peter enjoys the first true luxury experience of his life. After finishing the feast, the Shadow Lord checks his glowing status screen, now filled with powerful temporary buffs. The atmosphere suddenly changes when the serious president places down his utensils and captures the rookie's full attention. The guild leader congratulates him on receiving the highest evaluation and officially announces his permanent acceptance into the Grand Arcane Clan. However, the president immediately demands absolute secrecy regarding their connection. He warns that revealing the teenager's incredible abilities would attract countless enemies filled with jealousy and greed. Understanding the danger surrounding his rare class, the young warrior accepts the warning without hesitation. The respected leader folds his hands on the table and asks a serious question. Who are humanity's true enemies? Using only the limited knowledge he learned at school, Peter mentions neighboring countries known for their hostility toward his homeland. The president confirms the political tension, explaining that hostile nations send elite agents to eliminate important figures. Crowley adds that distant powers could also target the teenager once they discover how terrifying his abilities truly are. The necromancer clenches his fist, frustrated by the endless cycle of wars created by human ambition. The old mage is surprised when a dark aura begins leaking from the boy's body, revealing his genuine anger. Easy there, protagonist. The emotional damage meter is filling faster than the mana bar. Trying to calm the atmosphere, Crowley explains that human conflicts are not the greatest danger threatening the world. The Shadow Lord narrows his eyes, struggling to imagine something worse than entire nations fighting each other. The president places both hands on the table and asks a question that changes everything. What do you truly understand about this world? The teenager silently nods, feeling a cold sensation as he faces the seriousness of the two leaders. Looking out at the endless night sky, the president explains that humanity is nothing more than fragile prey in a much larger ecosystem. Peter's purple eyes widen as he struggles to understand the horrifying truth behind those words. The leader calmly explains that the world contains two kinds of portals, the familiar blessing rifts and the far more dangerous calamity abysses. The necromancer listens carefully, trying to understand what separates these two terrifying phenomena. The president raises 3 fingers, preparing to explain the 3 fundamental differences between them. First, normal dungeons appear through special keys and emerge exactly where their creators choose. Calamity abysses, however, appear randomly and can suddenly destroy entire cities without warning. The second difference lies within the creatures themselves. Monsters from ordinary dungeons always match the explorer's level. Calamity creatures are completely unpredictable and possess a natural strength far beyond normal monsters. The teenager quickly realizes these enemies are not just dangerous. They are walking disasters with teeth. Continuing his explanation, the president raises another finger and reveals the final difference. The direction of the portal's flow is the greatest threat of all. Creatures from normal dungeons remain trapped inside their own worlds and cannot invade Earth. But calamity beasts can cross over and attack humanity directly. The leader gives chaos as an example, explaining that a calamity beast once invaded the human world with terrifying ease. Peter freezes as he realizes monsters can treat Earth itself like another hunting ground. The president confirms his fear, stating that humanity's entire world is nothing more than prey waiting to be discovered. The young warrior finally understands that the unpredictable red portals are the true nightmare. The powerful leader sighs deeply and reveals that even those threats are not the ultimate disaster. The president explains that once every 10 years, a colossal abyss tears open the skies above a random nation. When that happens, thousands of smaller rifts appear alongside it. From that disaster emerges the Calamity King, forcing the chosen nation into a desperate battle for survival. The Blue Dragon leader's expression becomes grim as he reveals the terrifying truth. The next global war will begin in only 1 year. Peter slowly turns his head, shaken by the deadline, and wonders why something this important was never mentioned in any school textbook. The old counselor explains that the terrifying event remains hidden from the public because revealing it would cause worldwide panic. After connecting every piece of information he received, the teenager realizes the painful truth. His own country is likely the next battlefield. Both guild leaders widen their eyes at the same time, shocked by how quickly the rookie reached that conclusion. Even experienced leaders were not expecting the new guy to solve the entire mystery before finishing dinner. Recovering his calm expression, Crowley asks how someone so inexperienced managed to uncover such a dangerous secret. Standing before the two respected figures, the boy explains that he noticed the fear buried deep inside them. The president silently reflects on those words, realizing the teenager saw through the enormous pressure they had been carrying. The guild leader admits that the young man's observation skills are impressive, and regrets failing to hide his own anxiety. Holding his warm drink, Peter keeps his painful memories hidden, and explains that he understands that feeling better than most. He remembers his days as a soldier, forcing himself to stay composed while his body trembled from pure instinct. The president catches the strange comment and asks what he means. The teenager immediately realizes he spoke too much and awkwardly brushes it aside. Classic protagonist mistake, accidentally dropping a mysterious backstory and then pretending nobody heard it. Changing the subject, Peter asks how the leaders predicted where the invasion would happen so far in advance. Crowley reveals the existence of a powerful but neutral international organization called Oculus. The elder explains that this mysterious group employs professional seers around the world and earns enormous profits by selling their predictions. The necromancer understands the value of such information but raises another concern. He wonders if enemy nations could exploit the chaos of the dimensional war to launch their own attacks. The counselor explains that a global agreement exists, punishing any country that attacks the chosen nation during the 5 years of crisis. After hearing that, Peter finally understands why his homeland had experienced such unusual political peace. The president explains that most major nations are too busy preparing for their own survival to start unnecessary conflicts. Curious about the situation, Peter asks something unexpected. Has humanity ever tried invading the world of the calamity beasts? The room immediately falls silent. The president freezes, staring at the teenager as if he just asked whether anyone tried punching a volcano. Crowley warns that entering those massive portals is impossible because humanity barely survived defending against the Calamity King. Remembering the previous war, the elder reveals that his guild lost 70% of its warriors and nearly collapsed completely. The teenager lowers his head, finally understanding the true scale of the disaster, and admits his earlier thoughts were naive. The president looks directly at him and declares that the suffering belongs to the past. Now everything will be different because of him. The guild leader clenches his fists with excitement, explaining that Peter's limitless summons could double humanity's chances of victory. While staring at a magical projection of Earth, the necromancer hears that his power could literally change the fate of an entire nation. The president returns to his seat and promises that the entire guild will support him throughout the year of preparation. Taking control of the situation, the leader orders Crowley to bring the stored gift. The old mage places a beautiful black briefcase onto the table with a heavy thud. The teenager looks at the mysterious case and asks what is inside. Crowley explains that they are special gifts prepared by the guild. The metal lock snaps open, and the Shadow Lord watches the case with growing curiosity. Inside are several luxurious magical items, leaving Peter completely stunned. Wait, all of this is for me? The Elder picks up a silver necklace with an eye-shaped pendant and explains that it is a legendary artifact. The mystical accessory can instantly teleport its owner to an alley whenever needed. The teenager carefully examines the silver jewel and notices something incredible. Despite its rarity, the artifact only requires level 1 to use. Peter's eyes shine as he realizes how useful instant teleportation would be in dangerous situations. The president then reveals a golden phoenix symbol attached to the item, explaining that this artifact is normally reserved for the 5 strongest leaders during emergencies. The teenager carefully holds the necklace and asks how the guild leader plans to contact him after giving it away. The president simply smiles and reveals his own golden necklace. The Blue Dragon Guild owns 2 of these artifacts because of its status as the strongest organization. However, he explains that Peter's necklace is only connected to the main artifact for security purposes. After equipping it, the young hunter realizes he now has a powerful emergency escape tool. The only downside is the artifact's extremely long cooldown. Next, Crowley presents a beautiful silver ring and reveals that it was his very first legendary equipment. The Moonlight Ring displays its abilities, granting 100 additional mana points and doubling regeneration speed. Without hesitation, Peter places the ring on his finger and feels it adjust perfectly. A massive wave of dark energy surrounds him as his mana capacity rapidly increases to 250. Crowley explains that summoners require enormous amounts of mana, and Peter agrees that the ring is the perfect match for his abilities. The old mage releases a strange greenish smoke and warns the teenager to protect the artifact carefully. Otherwise, he will personally make him regret losing it. Peter immediately waves his hands in panic and promises to defend the equipment with his life. Returning to his usual calm expression, Crowley hands over 3 rare keys as another gift. The teenager reaches for them, only for the elder to suddenly pull them away. A true loot tease. The old man really activated the NPC dialogue option before giving the reward. Holding the keys firmly, Crowley explains that blessing keys are far too valuable to waste. Peter asks when he should use them. The elder advises saving them for powerful monsters because stronger enemies provide better rewards and more experience. Finally handing over the 3 keys, Crowley tells him to wait until reaching a higher level cap before using them. The young warrior admits he wants to grow stronger as quickly as possible, and asks if there is another option. The 2 leaders exchange confident smiles. Crowley reveals that they already prepared the perfect training location. Peter immediately becomes curious about what they have planned. A colossal fortress stretches across the horizon, surrounded by towering walls and serving as the legendary training grounds of the guild. The prodigy immediately recognizes the famous facility, remembering the countless rumors about its brutal difficulty and the ridiculous rewards waiting inside. The idea of challenging new monsters lights up Peter's face, and he eagerly asks how he can reach the place. The old counselor pulls out a small transparent crystal and explains that it can instantly transport him directly to the military zone. Handing over the glowing device, he tells the young hunter to head towards Sector 3. The area specifically designed for developing promising rookies. Peter stands with confidence, assuring the 2 veterans that he is completely recovered and ready for another dungeon adventure. Roger keeps his serious expression and warns the teenager to stay extremely cautious after arriving at the training grounds. The protagonist already knows the danger, understanding that the creatures there are far beyond ordinary dungeon monsters. The guild leader then adds another warning. The monsters are not the only threat waiting for him. Apparently, the professional hunters inside are national-level elites, and some of them enjoy bullying newcomers just because they can. Ah yes, nothing says experienced warrior like picking fights with the tutorial characters. Placing both hands on the table, the leader personally asks Peter to avoid unnecessary conflicts because the other fighters would have absolutely no chance against him. Peter simply smiles and raises his hand, promising he will do everything possible to avoid causing trouble. The elderly counselor advises him to reveal the golden teleportation crystal if a battle becomes unavoidable, since everyone recognizes those items. Satisfied with the instructions, Peter prepares to leave while the master reminds him not to forget the Phoenix Eye's ability. The young hunter gathers his strength, surrounded by a brilliant golden aura as he focuses on all the new equipment he received. Covered by a massive pillar of blue energy, Peter says goodbye to the 2 elders and promises to return with impressive results. A gigantic beam of light pierces the dark sky before crashing into the ancient structure of the military training grounds, officially beginning his next journey. The mystical energy fades away inside the facility, leaving only a glowing trail across the luxurious floor. The 2 experienced leaders silently stare at the empty space where Peter disappeared as the last traces of teleportation magic float away. Roger eventually smirks, admitting that he cannot wait to see how much the young man has grown by their next encounter. But his expression quickly turns cold. The dark-haired leader declares that they must remove every obstacle standing in Peter's path. The counselor immediately widens his eyes, asking if he is referring to the recent assassination attempt against the boy. Looking down with a chilling expression, Roger confirms it and reveals that their investigation has already uncovered the person responsible. He recalls the arrogant young man who was thrown out of the restaurant earlier and assumes he was the one who ordered the attack. The elderly counselor strokes his beard, understanding his partner's anger, and admits that the situation could have become disastrous if they were not surrounded by witnesses. Still, he warns Roger to act carefully for Peter's sake, and asks whether the investigation has been completed. The leader explains that the culprit is one of Peter's classmates, a rich kid whose father has money but lacks real military influence. However, that boy has one dangerous connection. His older brother serves as a captain in the feared elite forces of the White Tiger Guild. The counselor immediately understands the problem, knowing the White Tiger leader is extremely protective of his people and any confrontation could ignite a full guild war. Dark energy surrounds Roger as he declares that nothing will stop him from removing anyone who threatens the prodigy. Seeing his partner's overwhelming anger, the counselor asks what exactly he plans to do against the enemy family. Roger answers coldly that the student will be captured immediately, making it clear that the arrest will not be gentle. His fist tightens as he orders that the rich boy be eliminated if he dares resist. The veteran releases a powerful green aura and accepts full responsibility for the dangerous mission. His partner thanks him for the support and asks that the operation be carried out proudly under the name of the Grand Blue Dragon Guild. Leaning on his staff, the elderly mage gathers waves of emerald energy and prepares his own teleportation spell. Roger understands his companion's plan and realizes the enemy guild will probably direct all their hatred toward Blue Dragon. Crossing his arms, he accepts the risk, believing Peter is still too inexperienced to carry such a burden alone. Meanwhile, a massive building with enormous ceilings and luxurious decorations is filled with armed hunters searching for dungeon teams. Peter walks through the crowded entrance hall, hearing countless recruiters looking for companions for dangerous missions. The protagonist looks around in amazement at the giant holographic screens displaying achievements from newly discovered dungeons. Checking his own level, he focuses on his goal, leveling up quickly enough to remove the restrictions on his hidden power. The boy begins searching for the area with the highest experience rewards, when a cheerful voice suddenly interrupts his thoughts. A young mage wearing a pointed hat approaches him, complimenting his appearance and realizing he is a newcomer to the training hall. Peter confirms her guess, and the girl introduces herself as Isla Shaw, offering to act as his personal dungeon guide. Suspicious of her sudden kindness, Peter asks how much her information costs. Isla smiles and casually explains that every answer costs 1 gold coin. Because apparently even dungeon advice has a subscription fee now. Peter flips a coin into the air and remembers that he only has 10 gold pieces left until he sells his monster loot. Catching the coin, he decides to skip the small talk and asks which training area gives the most experience. The young mage happily clasps her hands, praising his decision and promising to reveal the best location. She then explains an important restriction. Hunters can only enter areas up to 3 levels above their current rank. With a serious expression, Isla reveals that the abyssal spider nest is the perfect place for him. However, she warns that he cannot enter immediately. Peter asks why he needs to wait, and the guide explains that the area contains an enormous swarm of small monsters requiring a large party. The young hunter calmly says waiting will not be necessary. Isla freezes in surprise, assuming he must already have a highly specialized team ready to fight. Pointing excitedly across the massive hall, Isla directs Peter's attention toward a powerful team preparing for that exact dungeon area. From a distance, the young hunter watches several heavily armed adventurers return from their mission. Even after setting a new record, the veterans immediately collapse onto the stairs, screaming for healers as their bodies suffer the brutal consequences of the dungeon. The mage uses their miserable condition as proof of how insane the challenge truly is, fearing the same fate awaits anyone who enters unprepared, because apparently the dungeon's welcome package includes trauma, injuries, and a free appointment with every healer nearby. Ignoring the warnings, Peter calmly approaches the glowing portal. When Isla realizes he has no party members with him, the necromancer casually reveals his plan. He will clear the challenge completely alone. The girl's eyes widen in disbelief before she starts shouting at him for making such a reckless decision. Her panic attracts the attention of dozens of nearby hunters, forcing Peter to stop beside the stairs and wonder why everyone suddenly cares. The guide covers her mouth in embarrassment and apologizes for causing such a scene. Meanwhile, a muscular adventurer bursts into laughter, making fun of Peter's class and joking that his magical abilities will not survive the dungeon's brutality. Isla regrets drawing attention to him, but Peter simply keeps walking, explaining that he is already used to people underestimating him. Trying one last time to stop him, the girl begs him to reconsider. Peter only thanks her for showing him such a useful training location. Standing directly before the dark portal, the hunter examines the information panel floating in front of the entrance. The current record shows nearly 50 minutes of combat, and the dungeon requirements reveal something even crazier. More than 1,000 monsters are waiting inside. Peter's smile grows as he imagines the ridiculous amount of experience, rewards, and leveling opportunities hidden within. Bro saw 1,000 monsters and thought, finally, a productive afternoon. After carefully checking the options during his first visit, Peter chooses to skip the beginner route and enters the dangerous hero mode. The injured veterans watching nearby immediately question his sanity after seeing the difficulty he selected. A man wearing a green hood openly criticizes the decision, claiming someone at Peter's level has no chance against that pressure. The moment Peter enters, the dungeon reveals a gigantic cavern covered in thick spider webs and illuminated by an eerie purple glow. The air is heavy with decay, and disgusting noises echo throughout the darkness, making even the fearless hunter feel uncomfortable. Without wasting time, Peter raises his massive scythe and summons his terrifying undead army through waves of black flames. His eyes shine with a violet glow as countless small spiders rush forward, practically volunteering to become experience points. The necromancer looks at the endless swarm and prepares his forces for a complete extermination. With a simple command, he orders his skeletal soldiers to wipe out every crawling creature in sight. One dark warrior launches itself through the air, its blade coated in sinister magic as it charges the enemy. The undead crashes down with incredible force, crushing a spider and rewarding Peter with valuable system points. However, the surviving insects quickly surround the soldier, climbing over its body and trapping its movements. Peter notices their tactic immediately as the creatures bury the skeleton beneath a moving black mass. The swarm prevents the warrior from defending itself while their poisonous fluids begin corroding its armor. Green venom eats away at the bones, creating cracks across the soldier's skull. Peter keeps smiling, admitting the situation is annoying but reminding himself that his army contains far more than one type of soldier. And this is where the spiders learn the classic villain mistake. They attack the wrong guy's disposable army. A new spell activates, and a crazed skeleton appears above the battlefield carrying a massive barrel filled with explosives. The undead bomber falls into position before detonating everything in a blazing explosion. The single blast wipes out countless spiders at once, flooding Peter's interface with achievement notifications. Checking the experience gained, the necromancer realizes eliminating the remaining creatures could provide an absurd amount of growth. He snaps his fingers and decides this place is practically a training paradise thanks to his endless supply of explosive minions. Instead of trying to hit tiny, fast-moving enemies normally, Peter chooses the easier option, turning his soldiers into walking bombs. Because when accuracy becomes annoying, apparently the answer is just more explosions. Multiple detonations tear through the cavern floor, destroying the spider swarm and filling the system with even more rewards. Covered in a bright blue aura, Peter celebrates as the overwhelming victory pushes him to the next level. Opening his interface, he immediately places every new point into magic, confirming that increasing his mana remains his highest priority. The system updates his attributes, revealing an even greater reserve of magical energy. Looking at the glowing ring, Peter appreciates the improvement but knows he needs to evolve even faster. Holding his scythe, he imagines the benefits waiting once he breaks through his restrictions and hopes his mana capacity receives another major boost. Suddenly, a monster with dark green eyes fires a massive web from the ceiling straight toward him. Peter quickly dodges the sticky attack and widens his eyes. The strength behind that threat is far greater than he expected. The creature slowly descends from above using a long silver strand, revealing its true size as a fully grown spider. Running across the rocky ground, Peter realizes his explosive skeletons cannot easily attack something hiding so high above. But the necromancer only smiles. He summons purple flames in his free hand, remembering that he was never meant to fight alone. A dark mist spreads across the cavern, revealing one of his evolved soldiers specialized in precision attacks. Peter aims his scythe toward the enemy while the new marksman prepares an arrow charged with powerful blue lightning. The projectile tears through the air at incredible speed, striking upward toward the spider clinging to the ceiling. A thunderous flash erupts as the electric shot hits perfectly, sending the monster crashing down and granting another 100 experience points. Wrapped in blue flames, the archer takes position beside Peter, becoming the perfect long-range support. The young hunter studies the glowing bow and recognizes the soldier's incredible dexterity. He immediately understands that this evolved minion can accomplish far more than simple attacks. Moving to the front line, Peter orders the marksman to maintain the same power in the upcoming shots. Before they can continue, dozens of new spiders crawl out from the shadows, preparing another massive assault. Peter responds by summoning a wave of glowing skulls that crash into the ground and create blazing barriers around him and his archer. Using his explosive undead as a defensive weapon, the necromancer leaves the ground enemies completely under their control. Loaded with explosive barrels, the undead soldiers rush forward as waves of scorching heat swallow the nearby spiders and flood Peter's system with elimination rewards. Charred spider legs rain down around the necromancer, proving that his bomb strategy is anything but subtle. The Lord quickly shifts his attention back to the ceiling, leaving aerial control to his specialized ranged unit. The skeletal marksman pulls back the mystical bowstring with incredible force, causing dozens of arrows to glow with concentrated energy. Releasing the tension, the undead archer fires a massive barrage toward the pitch-black ceiling. The glowing projectiles tear through the darkness and reveal countless green eyes belonging to the hidden predators above. The system immediately announces a special ability activation, unleashing an electric storm throughout the entire cavern. Hundreds of enchanted arrows descend like a storm of light, covering every enemy hiding in the upper area. The adult spiders are pierced without mercy, falling from their webs as the deadly lightning rains down. The creatures crash onto the ground, kicking up clouds of dust while blue flames continue burning around their bodies. Peter holds his side and praises the marksman's efficiency, recognizing the incredible area damage of the lightning attack. However, after checking the mana consumption, he realizes the technique is draining his reserves at an alarming rate. Because apparently having a walking artillery cannon comes with the tiny downside of needing a magical battery pack. Extending his hand forward, Peter thanks the annoying swarm for disappearing and prepares himself for whatever comes next. Then, two enormous red eyes begin glowing deep inside the darkness. The dungeon's true boss has finally arrived. Outside the portal, the two veteran hunters continue watching the battle. After noticing the fight has lasted around 20 minutes, the injured warrior confidently predicts the rookie has already lost. Ally immediately reminds him that if the mission had failed, the system would have already announced it. The injured man refuses to believe escape is possible, explaining that they know every corner of the dungeon and there is nowhere to hide. The green-hooded hunter considers another possibility. Maybe the young fighter is actually battling through the entire monster swarm. The veteran angrily dismisses the idea, claiming that some low-ranked summoner with a few skeletons could never defeat such a massive horde. The hooded hunter quietly thinks about it, reluctantly admitting that a shadow mage might actually have enough power to clear the area. He remembers Peter's calm expression when entering the dungeon and feels a strange instinct that victory might not be impossible. Still, he shakes his head and rejects the thought. No matter how strong the rookie is, defeating the final monster should be impossible. Deep within the dungeon's darkest lair, the Spider Empress waits patiently across a ceiling covered in endless webs. The enormous creature suddenly drops from above and crashes onto the rocky floor, creating a huge dust cloud in front of Peter. The young hunter examines the monster's ridiculous size and notices the disgusting smell of decay surrounding its body. The giant spider opens its circular mouth filled with sharp fangs and launches a massive web attack directly at him. Peter remains completely calm as the sticky projectile cuts through the air toward him. At the last moment, a powerful skeleton warrior carrying a large halberd steps forward and blocks the attack with the weapon's handle. Leaning against his undead guard, Peter mocks the creature's aggressive greeting and realizes this must be its usual way of saying hello. A spider boss really said "Welcome to my dungeon" and chose violence immediately. The necromancer points forward and decides to answer with his own introduction. He summons an explosive skeleton loaded with gunpowder. A blazing explosion instantly engulfs the monster as the spider screams beneath the chain of devastating blasts. Before the creature can recover, Peter launches several skulls through the air like deadly magical missiles. Another undead soldier leaps forward with a massive shield and smashes the ground, creating a powerful shockwave. Explosions continue shaking the cavern as flames consume the giant insect from every direction. Despite the overwhelming attack, the spider refuses to fall. Peter recognizes the creature's incredible durability and understands why it was chosen as the dungeon's final boss. His eye glows deep crimson as a dark aura spreads around him. The necromancer gives a simple command: paralyze it. A gigantic magical eye appears above the battlefield, bathing the enormous spider in terrifying scarlet light. The fear ability overwhelms the monster, freezing it completely under the pressure of the spell. Walking around the battlefield, Peter confirms that the boss has finally been immobilized. Now, the easy part begins. With a merciless purple glow in his eyes, the young master orders his army to continue the assault. The explosive undead charge toward the helpless target, creating a pillar of fire and destruction inside the massive cavern. The system finally announces the Spider Empress's defeat, rewarding Peter with exactly 35,000 additional experience points. Wrapped in brilliant emerald energy, the necromancer reaches level 14 and feels his magical power increase once again. Looking at his glowing interface, Peter celebrates the insane progress after gaining 2 entire levels from a single dungeon run. Walking through the battlefield surrounded by his skeleton army, he examines the mountain of dropped items. There is just one problem. His inventory is already completely full. Outside the dungeon, the green-hooded hunter nervously bites his nails while waiting through the 30-minute mark. Growing frustrated, he wonders where the rookie could possibly be. A blonde mage holding a staff finally gives up, claiming the young hunter failed to clear the dungeon alone and deciding to leave with her team. The hooded man sighs and reluctantly agrees, remembering that the lone mage is not even a high-ranked fighter. Accepting the assumption that Peter lost, he turns away and runs back toward his companions. But before he can leave, the massive portal suddenly releases a notification sound. The hunter freezes instantly. The announcement means only one thing: the Extreme Dungeon's record has been broken again. The entire crowd erupts into whispers, struggling to understand how someone could clear the terrifying spider nest twice as fast as expected. A powerful female warrior and her partner laugh loudly, refusing to believe the ridiculous possibility that the lone teenager actually defeated the challenge. Then the giant screen updates. Peter's name appears. The display confirms his solo victory and reveals the new record: 22 minutes and 12 seconds. The crowd falls silent as the impossible becomes reality. Peter casually walks out of the glowing portal with both hands inside his pockets, looking like he just finished a normal afternoon walk. The green-hooded hunter stares in disbelief before shouting to everyone nearby. The necromancer did it. He cleared the entire nightmare dungeon completely by himself. Oblivious to the chaos around him, Peter casually scratches his nose, wondering if some random spider web got stuck on his face. Leela rushes over in disbelief, still stunned by the record-breaking clear, while the young man simply explains that his explosive skulls did most of the work. A dark-haired archer with long flowing hair immediately calls him a liar in front of everyone gathered inside the hall. The man demands an explanation, unable to understand how a single mage could create enough bombs to erase thousands of spiders in barely 20 minutes. Peter stares at the unfamiliar marksman with cold purple glowing eyes, searching his memory to see if they have ever crossed paths before. A massive female warrior backs up the accusation, claiming that a summoner's cooldowns should make such a feat impossible. The long-haired fighter steps closer and insists Peter reveal his real strategy, refusing to believe his simple explanation. The boy's silence only makes the man more suspicious, and a sudden chill runs through him as he considers the possibility that the rookie is hiding something terrifying. Leaning forward with a mocking grin, the warrior tries to pressure Peter into exposing his supposed secret. The necromancer answers by creating a skull engulfed in violet flames and calmly asks, "Do you really want to know the truth?" Yeah, nothing says friendly conversation like summoning a cursed flaming skull mid-argument. The intense darkness pouring from the summon forces the arrogant man to jump backward instinctively. Sweating heavily, he feels the urge to escape and realizes from Peter's eyes alone that this boy has already defeated people before. Trying to regain his confidence, the man convinces himself that the rookie cannot attack him in front of everyone and that he still has a chance. Pointing aggressively, he questions how someone with such a low rank even entered a place meant for elite hunters. A blonde woman supports the accusation and throws out a ridiculous theory that Peter might be a spy from another country. Leela steps back nervously as the tension rises, while the surrounding hunters begin blaming the young necromancer for potentially causing trouble inside the hall. The instigator smiles quietly, satisfied that his words have turned the entire crowd against Peter. The troublemaker whispers to his injured companion, saying the necromancer has become everyone's target and that the situation is about to become much more entertaining. But Peter remains completely calm. To prove his class was real, the young man summons two skeletal soldiers right in front of everyone. The crowd immediately falls silent as the undead warriors appear. He then raises the golden crystal given to him moments earlier by the two legendary guild leaders. The veterans instantly recognize the item and freeze in shock because that rare teleportation crystal belongs only to the highest-ranking guild masters. The long-haired marksman starts questioning Peter's true identity, while the boy decides this pointless argument is wasting valuable training time. Turning away, Peter heads toward the magical portal and says he is busy leveling up and has no interest in playing detective. The provocateur turns pale, finally understanding the danger of provoking someone carrying an artifact from the most powerful figures in the nation. The marksman secretly admires Peter's mental strength, realizing that all the accusations and hostility never managed to shake him. Peter sighs, thinking that if Master Roger had not demanded secrecy, he would have already crushed this annoying fool. The irony is not lost on him either, as he wonders if he somehow has a special ability that attracts idiots. Ignoring the entire crowd, the necromancer focuses only on growth and selects the terrifying Doomsday difficulty. The injured hunter watches the portal react and notices an overwhelming wave of magical energy pouring from it. His expression changes instantly as he realizes Peter just entered the spider dungeon's highest possible difficulty. That guy really clicked the hardest option like it was a tutorial mode. Inside the dungeon, countless small green spiders gather, preparing to overwhelm the intruder. Dozens of dark soldiers charge forward under their master's command, ready to face the endless swarm. The tiny creatures climb over the undead warriors, turning close combat into an absolute nightmare. Peter simply raises his hand and smiles, realizing the spiders are basically walking targets for his explosive servants. A skeletal warrior carrying a barrel of gunpowder dives straight into the swarm and disappears beneath thousands of crawling bodies. The next second, a massive orange explosion tears through the cave floor, destroying dozens of enemies and showering Peter with experience. The system flashes as he reaches level 15, and the necromancer praises the ridiculous amount of rewards from the extreme difficulty. A golden notification appears, revealing that another restriction has been removed. The system confirms that every enemy defeated will now permanently increase his maximum mana. Peter smiles as he realizes that both monsters and humans can become valuable sources of magical growth. Hearing the endless movement of insects around him, the necromancer understands this entire dungeon is basically an unlimited supply of upgrades. Holding his scythe, Peter forms a dark grin and declares that this place is nothing short of his personal paradise. The next moment, a gigantic spider with glowing green eyes leaps across the rocks, releasing a horrifying screech. Peter casually lowers his head as a razor-sharp spider leg slices through the air above him. One of his skeletal warriors instantly steps forward and blocks the attack with a massive sword. The undead soldier's blade cuts through the creature's leg effortlessly, releasing a burst of green energy. Without slowing down, the skeleton rushes forward and slices the monster in half, earning 100 experience points. A system window appears, announcing that the kill also granted Peter one additional maximum mana point. Covered in blue flames, the necromancer checks the notification and smiles as his magical limit continues increasing. Looking over his shoulder with complete confidence, Peter calls for his loyal skeletal archer. The undead marksman wearing a pirate hat pulls back his bowstring as a glowing magical arrow begins forming. The skeleton aims toward the massive ceiling, gathering enormous amounts of energy for a single attack. A huge magic circle appears above, unleashing a devastating storm of countless glowing arrows. The projectiles rain down simultaneously, piercing through the enormous spider swarm and creating a flood of experience notifications. Wrapped in blue lightning, Peter eliminates 104 enemies and raises his mana total to 470 points. Looking at the mountain of defeated monsters, he calculates that reaching this level of power naturally would have required around 21 more levels. For once, the system upgrade is actually doing the heavy lifting. Peter just showed up and turned grinding into a speedrun. He studies the new restriction removal and realizes it only expands his mana ceiling, meaning his current reserves are already more than enough for this dungeon. Raising his hand, Peter orders the skeletal archer to conserve his strength for the boss encounter, and the undead immediately acknowledges the command. With a confident snap of his fingers, the necromancer decides the explosive skeletons can handle every remaining enemy. The cheerful undead bomber marches forward carrying a massive flaming barrel, basically becoming a walking disaster with legs. Several gunpowder-filled skeletons charge into the darkness, triggering enormous explosions that shake the entire dungeon. Meanwhile, the adventurers outside the portal begin wondering if the rookie can actually break the record, while discussing just how brutal extreme mode really is. The injured warrior with bandages claims that anyone attempting this difficulty would need at least an hour to survive. Peter completely ignores those expectations and swings his dark scythe, wiping out enemies after only 30 minutes of fighting. The dungeon is swallowed by a violent storm of flames, as thousands of spiders are burned away at once. The battlefield finally goes quiet, and Peter stands among the remains, gripping his weapon and declaring that the mission is complete. A wave of magical light surrounds him as the system rewards him with 60,000 experience points from defeating the Spider Queen, instantly pushing him up 2 levels. The necromancer smiles, praising the ridiculous experience gain and enjoying the fact that he does not have to share any rewards with teammates. Then he raises his hand and reveals the shocking result. His maximum mana has increased by 615 points. Checking his inventory, Peter notices it is overflowing with useless drops and decides it is time to clear everything out. Outside the dungeon, the green-hooded adventurer freezes when a loud system announcement echoes through the hall, revealing a new record has been broken. The blindfolded veteran turns completely pale, unable to believe a single person just surpassed the time of his entire team. The massive display confirms Peter's achievement, recording his solo clear at an unbelievable 36 minutes. The young necromancer calmly walks out of the glowing portal, while everyone around him stares as if some legendary figure just descended. The excited green-clothed adventurer jumps around, pointing out that Peter accomplished 2 impossible records in the same day. Watching the boy's relaxed expression, the hunter praises his overwhelming strength before asking where Layla disappeared to. Completely fascinated, the adventurer decides Peter is his new idol and promises to fight alongside him someday. His excitement reaches maximum levels as he turns toward the blindfolded leader and suggests they immediately challenge another dungeon. Meanwhile, the veteran sweats nervously, remembering his lost eye and feeling his pride completely crushed by a newcomer. Walking away alone, the defeated warrior finally gives up being a fighter and calls his family, saying he plans to run their fishing business instead. Meanwhile, Peter holds out a single coin and asks where the exchange center is. Isla immediately refuses the payment, waving her hands and saying she does not want it. The necromancer stares at her sharply, confused by the sudden change. Embarrassed, the girl lowers her hat and explains that he should consider it a reward for breaking those incredible records. Inside her mind, Isla realizes this mysterious boy is far beyond an ordinary hunter and decides she needs to stay on his good side. With renewed excitement, the mage guides Peter through the long corridors while he thanks her for the help. They eventually reach the massive exchange district, where Isla introduces the area before leading him down toward the clerk. A well-dressed employee greets them politely and asks whether they want to purchase or sell something. Peter immediately answers that he wants to sell his items. The clerk looks at the young necromancer's level and assumes a level 17 player could not possibly have anything valuable. The guy really underestimated the loot goblin standing in front of him. Seeing the small counter, Peter worries that all his items will not fit, but the employee explains that the surface has a magical storage barrier. Accepting the explanation, Peter releases a dark aura and prepares to summon all his collected equipment. The clerk smiles arrogantly, waiting to see how much this rookie actually managed to gather. Then a massive system window appears above the counter, displaying countless equipment records. A mountain of weapons and armor suddenly crashes onto the table, proving the exchange system can somehow handle absurd amounts of loot. Peter smiles when he sees everything neatly stored, satisfied that the process worked perfectly. The employee, however, completely loses his composure at the ridiculous pile in front of him. He asks where all these items came from, trying to calculate how many dungeon runs would be required to collect such a quantity. Peter simply explains that he always hunts alone and happens to have great luck with drops. The clerk immediately starts treating him like some hidden young noble instead of a normal hunter. Switching to a much friendlier attitude, the employee asks Peter to return the next day so they can properly evaluate everything. Peter agrees, but before he can leave, Isla stops him and suggests checking out the nearby equipment shops. Looking at his current armor and staff, the necromancer realizes both have become completely outdated and decides to search for upgrades. Accepting her offer, Peter follows the mage toward the market. They arrive at the Grand Market, where Isla points toward the enormous shopping area filled with weapons and magical equipment. Peter thanks her for the recommendation. The girl immediately highlights a rare weapon designed specifically for necromancers, explaining that it grants 1 additional summon slot and costs 1,000 gold coins. She excitedly explains that an extra undead servant is incredibly valuable for that class, calling the weapon almost a divine gift. But Peter knows he will soon be able to summon thousands of creatures, so he casually rejects the offer. Isla is left completely shocked. The girl quickly recovers and points toward another display, promising that this item will definitely interest him. Inside the case sits an amethyst ring that automatically increases mana and costs 1,500 gold coins. She explains that the ring provides magical power simply by being worn, and reminds him that necromancers rely heavily on mana. Peter looks at his hand and compares it to the legendary ring he already received from Elder Aaron Crowley. The expensive market item instantly loses its value. Smiling awkwardly, Peter declines again, explaining that mana is not a problem for him, and asking to see something else. Ela walks beside him in confusion, struggling to understand how someone could need neither more summons nor extra magic. Leaning closer with curiosity, she finally asks the mysterious adventurer what he is actually searching for. The young man freezes with a sharp, unreadable gaze, standing completely still as something deep inside him begins to react. Then, without warning, a horrifying wave of dark energy bursts through the corridor, forming skulls and monstrous claws that make Ela instantly panic. Shadows coil around Peter's feet as he slowly walks forward, almost like he is being pulled by an invisible force. The necromancer stops in front of a display case and realizes he was unconsciously drawn there before even knowing why. Inside rests a mysterious shadow cloak, an artifact requiring the sacrifice of 100 ordinary summons to create a single elite warrior. Isla nervously asks if that impossible item was really what caught his attention and wants to know why he chose it. She explains that the cloak is basically useless because no summoner alive can maintain 100 active minions at the same time. Meanwhile, Peter looks at the garment with absolute certainty, realizing that what sounds impossible to everyone else is exactly what his army was built for. Bro looked at the biggest restriction in the room and basically said, "Finally, a challenge." The boy imagines sacrificing countless weaker soldiers to create elite fighters hundreds of times stronger. With a confident grin, Peter decides the artifact was practically created specifically for him. He declares that he must obtain the cloak, even though the display clearly states that the item is unavailable for purchase. Isla's eyes widen at his ridiculous confidence, leaving her completely speechless. To answer his question, the guide explains that the artifact was obtained from an abyssal creature during the nation's final war. Peter places his hand against the glass and feels disappointed, believing the trapped artifact somehow called out to him. Standing before the dark cloak, he promises that he will eventually set it free from its current prison. The necromancer then asks if there is any secret method to obtain the forbidden equipment, completely confusing Isla. After thinking for a moment, the girl admits there might actually be one possible way. The guide reveals that the hall's yearly tournament rewards the champion with the right to select any item from the exchange house. However, she warns that every previous winner chose legendary weapons worth fortunes, and she doubts the rules would allow someone to claim an accessory. Peter immediately reaches his conclusion. If the rules do not forbid it, he only needs to win the entire tournament. Isla stares at him in disbelief and starts explaining just how insane that idea is. She reveals that the competition is backed by the 5 strongest guilds in the country, and only attracts the absolute best fighters. The mage covers her face in frustration, saying becoming the champion is basically a fantasy beyond imagination. The woman was explaining a mountain-sized problem, and Peter treated it like a casual side quest. Completely ignoring her concerns, Peter touches the glass again and repeats his promise to rescue the artifact. Annoyed that he refuses to listen, Isla warns him that the tournament is filled with geniuses and high-ranking professionals. Peter looks back with a cold expression and calmly confirms that he heard her warning. He simply does not care who stands in his way. With his eyes glowing and a powerful aura surrounding him, the necromancer confidently declares that his victory is already decided. Ela takes a small step back, unable to understand where that ridiculous level of confidence comes from. Returning to his relaxed attitude, Peter asks when the tournament begins. The guide quickly answers that the competition starts in 2 weeks. Holding his golden crystal, Peter realizes that 14 days is the perfect amount of time to maximize his strength. Then, without hesitation, he crushes the glowing crystal in his hand. A burst of magical sparks explodes through the hallway as the energy floods around him. Absorbing the power, Peter realizes that increasing his maximum mana means nothing if he cannot recover it quickly enough. With his plan decided, the necromancer says he will rest for now, and promises Isla he will return the next day. In an instant, his body transforms into a blue beam of light and disappears from the market corridor. Left alone, Isla stares at the empty space and complains that this guy would rather sleep than train for the greatest competition of the year. Meanwhile, far away from the busy exchange hall, a quiet night surrounds the small building where Peter's apartment is located. Inside his room, the young man walks around shirtless while drying his hair with a towel, enjoying his first peaceful moment after a brutal day. But before going to sleep, Peter suddenly remembers one final thing he needs to check. Facing the skeletal marksman he summoned, he asks about its abilities. The undead warrior confirms that it possesses 4 different skills. Peter orders the soldier to reveal its status panel, and the command is immediately followed. A glowing interface appears inside the room, displaying various deadly techniques, including enhanced vision and powerful arrow barrages. One specific skill catches Peter's attention because it deals true damage, completely ignoring enemy defenses. Interested by the description, he asks why the marksman never uses such an overwhelming attack. The skeleton explains that the technique requires 3 full minutes of uninterrupted concentration, making it nearly impossible during actual combat. It also reveals that lowering the mana invested into the arrow reduces its size, weakening the attack's destructive force. Peter thinks carefully and realizes that even with his massive mana supply, the preparation time makes the skill unreliable in battle. Setting the matter aside, he sits on the edge of the bed and decides to enjoy the rare chance to actually sleep. He orders the marksman to guard him throughout the night and keep the room safe. Lying down on the wooden bed, Peter relaxes and comments on how surprisingly comfortable it feels. Slowly closing his eyes, he remembers that during his old military life, he never experienced anything this soft. But as sleep takes over, painful memories from his past begin resurfacing. A harsh voice suddenly tears through the darkness, ordering him to wake up immediately. Inside the memory, the silhouette of an armed soldier rises from the shadows and screams at the new recruit to get off the ground. The veteran commander angrily scolds him for sleeping during guard duty, warning that enemies could appear at any moment. Holding his rifle nervously, the young soldier receives a brutal lesson about the consequences of a nighttime ambush. The superior grabs his weapon and reminds him that the person standing watch carries the lives of the entire squad on his shoulders. Walking through the darkness, another soldier approaches the pair and tells the commander to calm down before the tension gets any worse. Standing near the destroyed doorway, the marksman argues that blaming the exhausted rookie for the entire nation's invasion is completely unreasonable. The commander immediately pushes back, reminding him that they are deep inside enemy territory, being hunted like helpless prey on a freezing night. The situation finally sinks in, and the ally decides to take over the watch because the young recruit has been awake for 2 straight days. The veteran smiles and praises the kid's ridiculous endurance, impressed that he managed to sleep directly on frozen concrete. The young soldier scratches his head and awkwardly jokes that he basically grew up sleeping on the ground, causing the older man to laugh at his strange pride. The kind-faced warrior admits that after the war ends, his biggest dream is to sleep in the softest bed imaginable. But before they can enjoy another peaceful moment, the sound of rushing wind cuts through the night. Something enormous and armored tears through the sky, falling straight toward them like a deadly missile. The veteran's expression instantly changes as he realizes the terrifying object is heading directly for their position. Yeah, because apparently the universe decided they hadn't suffered enough yet. A massive explosion erupts, swallowing the entire area and reducing the burning building to ruins within seconds. The violent blast throws the 2 soldiers through the air, ending their battle with a brutal and merciless fate. Back in the present, Peter suddenly wakes up drenched in sweat after reliving the painful memory of his soldier's final moments. The skeletal archer beside him notices his movement and calmly announces that his dark master has finally returned to consciousness. Sitting on the edge of the bed, Peter realizes morning has arrived and forces himself to leave those old memories behind. He prepares to move forward, returning his focus to the goals ahead. Adjusting his tie with a serious expression, the warrior once again adopts his relentless mindset. Checking his status screen, Peter confirms that his entire mana reserve has completely recovered. A dark aura flows from his hand as he declares that both his body and mind are fully prepared for another day of progress. Meanwhile, inside the massive exchange hall, a golden light suddenly draws the attention of nearby hunters. The adventurers begin whispering excitedly, assuming another elite guild member has arrived. Many continue discussing the mysterious necromancer who carries a golden teleportation crystal and recently broke impossible records. Walking through the crowd, Peter ignores all the attention and focuses only on figuring out his next move. The rumors can wait, the grind never sleeps. Then, a familiar voice suddenly calls out to him from the crowd. The pointy-hatted mage waves enthusiastically, guiding Peter through the busy hall. As they walk through the shining corridors, Isla suggests they collect the money earned from selling his equipment, and her companion agrees. However, her partner quickly notices something strange. The meeting clearly wasn't arranged just because of some coins. Peter immediately gets to the point and asks if there is any dungeon containing more monsters than the abyssal spider nest. Isla freezes and warns him that simply having more creatures does not automatically mean better experience. She continues advising him to choose safer hunting methods instead. But after realizing how stubborn he is, the mage sighs and admits that dungeons filled with countless monsters do exist. The problem is that they belong to a completely different category, large-scale dungeons. She explains that these areas contain thousands of enemies spread across enormous maps, creating battles that are longer, harder, and far more dangerous. Raising 3 fingers, Isla explains the hall's rule. Only teams with at least 3 members can enter those locations. Peter thinks for a moment and realizes he needs more allies. The mage warns that experienced teams usually reject random newcomers joining them out of nowhere. Peter simply smiles and looks at her, reaching an obvious conclusion. They only need to find one more person. Isla immediately understands what he means. The girl's face turns pale as she steps back and shouts that she absolutely refuses to enter such a suicidal dungeon with him. Even when Peter offers gold, she refuses, explaining that they would still be missing one final teammate. Then, at the perfect moment, a mysterious hand suddenly rises from nearby. The 2 adventurers turn around in silence, wondering who decided to join the conversation. A green-armored warrior shyly raises his hand and asks if he can accompany them into the large-scale dungeon. Hila stares at the volunteer with disbelief. In her mind, she can only reach one conclusion. They somehow found another person crazy enough to follow Peter. And that's where part 1 wraps up. Go ahead, drop a like and comment part 2. Your comment helps push the video to more people on YouTube. I'll also leave 2 recommended videos from the channel that you'll probably enjoy. That's it for today. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.